everybody that we are being recorded for later broadcast, and the school has entered into their negotiations with their unions, so try to keep the topics broad and not down to specific amounts and positions. The school is trying to negotiate in good faith and not tip their hand or compromise the negotiations. So we will get ready and count in. All righty. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting of February 28th. On the agenda tonight is the education budgets. Since we are Zoom, we will be doing all votes in attendance by roll call. So I will start with attendance. Denny?
Here.
Josette?
Yes.
Allie?
Here.
Ryan?
Here.
Steve? No Steve. Susan?
Here.
Jeff is not going to be here. Kathleen?
Here.
Lucy?
Here.
Jean?
Here.
Doug?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Lisa?
Here.
Larry? Yep. So we have, and myself, 3, 5, 7, 13 attendance. All right, we're going to start with Tri-County. Jim, did you want to just give us an overview of the number you came up with for Tri-County?
Sure. So the numbers I came up with, Tri-County, were based upon an estimate I was provided back in November. The budgeted amount is $1,520,000. The actual amount that the school business manager has advised me is $1,508,764, which is about an $11,236 difference.
All right. Okay, do we have representatives from Tri-County?
Yes.
Do you want to introduce for us?
The school superintendent, the business manager, and the school committee member.
Welcome. Please state your name and your position so we can get it into our minutes.
Okay. I'm Karen McGuire, the superintendent of Tri-County Regional Vocational Technical High School.
Dan Haynes, School Business Administrator.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Jim did give us a little bit of information based on enrollment of 83 students last year and anticipated 84 students this year. On the enrollment process, are all applications now turned off and it's just a case of accepting students, or are you still accepting students into the next year?
So we're in the process right now of accepting grade 9 students and backfilling with some grade 10 students, and we anticipate that will continue for the next couple of weeks, really, and then we'll start with out-of-district.
But the applications are all in at this point, the deadline is
The
passed.
applications are coming in right now, yeah.
So we are looking at no more than 84 students for Walpole?
So it's, right now, the applications are around the same. It'll depend on, once the students are through the application process, there's a whole process that they go through, grades, attendance, behavior, and so forth. The applications are up this year substantially across the district, so it'll be, we'll know better, I think, towards the late spring, what it'll look like, really, number-wise for the towns. For next year.
Yeah, that will drive the budget for fiscal
Next year,
'24.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, this is based on the,
okay,
I believe the numbers are set in October,
Yes.
right?
They are.
okay,
There.
all right. And my only other question is there a state funding formula that goes into your budget? That, because I know it's like, just looking at saying, well, we're adding one student, but it's a $100,000 swing, and I wasn't sure how the formulas have maybe been modified since prior years when we talked about it.
So the required minimum contribution, which I think is what you were
Yeah.
alluding to, was an increase for Walpole for Tri-County of $58,995.
Okay. And then the rest of the, so that's based on the state formula minimum contribution regardless of how many students enroll.
It's based on the
But
enrolled
it is by-
student
okay.
numbers,
Okay.
correct.
But the actual assessment is higher.
Based on above the minimum transportation capital,
Okay.
the remainder of the assessment calculation.
Okay.
Correct.
Other questions for Tri-County? Yes, Larry.
Hi, welcome.
thank you.
Just a quick question. When I do the math of 83 students in '22, it's $16,930 a student. And in fiscal '23 for 84 students, it's $17,961 per student. So it's $1,031 per student, almost 6% over fiscal '22. Does that make sense, or is that?
And so you're talking about Walpole's?
Yeah, this, no, yeah.
So some of that would
allocation.
be the required minimum contribution, calculated by the state, would drive your, per pupil enrollment,
The cost,
calculation,
about the
correct?
17, almost 18,000
Yes.
with the student. Okay.
Yeah, so there's a few things that they take into consideration, and they come up with a calculation of what each community can contribute based on what they can afford to contribute.
Yeah.
And this is what the contribution would be. Yeah, it varies by town.
Based on the wealth formula and your property values. So it's your ability to pay,
And the state,
as determined by the college.
by the
It
state.
may not be
Yeah.
what you feel your ability to pay.
It's like the
Right.
FAFSA, you know what they tell you? You fill
Yeah,
that
I
out, you're
do.
like, wait a second, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I get it
yeah,
then.
now you get it, yeah. So,
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Mark.
So would that work out where the state comes up with its assessment to all the towns that support Tri-County? And then the delta difference between your actual costs and that then gets divided by the number of students, and then the town is charged a surcharge per student? Is that how it basically ties in?
Everything above the required minimum contribution is allocated by student enrollment
Okay,
to the member communities.
thank you.
Any questions from our remote people?
Mark, this is Brian. I have a question.
Sure, Brian.
Through you, Mark. Do the students at Tri-County pay for extracurricular activities and busing and those types of things, same as the in-district students at Walpole schools?
Students pay, our student activities, we have a rich student activity, many activities, ski club, classes. They pay dues, and they pay for those extracurricular. We do not charge a bus fee at Tri-County.
Is that something you've ever explored? I know in Walpole, the students and the families have to pay a busing fee, and I would hate the burden to be on all the taxpayers in Walpole to pay for busing for the 84 that are anticipated in going next year. Have you looked at
We
bus
do
fee?
get state reimbursement for our transportation costs. Last year, it was about 91% of our mile and a half and above transportation costs were reimbursed by the state. In the governor's budget, it's closer to 80% this year. So we do get funding from the state for those transportation costs.
But have you looked at charging
No.
fee for that? Okay, thank you.
Josette, go ahead.
On those reimbursements you get, do you receive them during your fiscal period? Or are they usually, like some things our school department deals with, they come in the beginning of the second fiscal period?
We get them twice a year, December and at the end of the school year.
So you're able to utilize them immediately?
In the budget.
And they're part of our budget process. They're part of our budgeted revenues
Okay, thank you.
when we calculate our assessments. If I might, I
Sure.
just want to add that our budget is a 2.56% increase over fiscal '22. I wanted to mention that.
Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, what's the percentage of students that go on to four-year universities?
So if we look at this, if you look at vocational schools across the board, including Tri-County, and Tri-County has a higher, about 60% of kids that go on to 2 or 4-year schools. But the attrition rate of students, when they do decide to go, they stay in the schools, as opposed to some of the higher schools that have a higher rate where the students withdraw after so many years. We have students, we have 92% workforce placement, so those students that are going to school are also going to work and then to school. So that's really our mission, is the workforce piece, along with training students for post-secondary or 4-year college experience if they desire.
The other question is, with regards to the workforce piece, do you see like shifts, like more students are into plumbing or into electrical or into something else that changes
Oh,
how
sure.
you're staffing and?
Yes, yeah, so we see that. I've been in, this is my first year at Tri-County, but I've been in career and tech ed for 24 years. And so it is what I've done. And a lot of the work that I did prior to coming to Tri-County was working directly with placing students in the workforce and watching those trends and developing programs to address those trends. And you certainly do see that. You certainly, right now the need, it's this sort of a wave, but we're back to the need for plumbers, electricians, carpenters, where years ago we moved away from that a little bit and a little high-tech, continues this way.
Okay, thank you.
And a lot of cybersecurity now is a big one that we're talking about. We have been actually, we're talking about increasing it in our expanding opportunity for adults that come for a certificate program. And again, with the day program students. And certainly this week we've learned a lot more about that and the need for that, so.
Other questions? I don't see any. Since Jim did budget in excess of what the Tri-County is going to assess, Jim and I had a discussion about, do we want to adjust down and move that 11,000 to something else? It's my leaning towards let the budget stand so we're not rewriting budgets and let it fall to free cash at the end of the year. That way, if we were to turn around and say, well, why don't we just take it and put it to OPEB? Well, if it goes to free cash, we get to evaluate our assessment that we want to put into free cash, from free cash to OPEB in the fall, so it'll still be there for that purpose, or we can look at our other capital expenditures and move it accordingly. Yes?
So the concern is lowering the budget now so that we don't, in next year, get an assessment and go up, say, 5-6%, because we're going down. I'm not sure of the reasoning.
It's a case of, do we want to do the math and say, we got $11,236 that we could move somewhere else?
Yeah.
So do we move it within our budget now to something else that we think might need funding? Or do we just let it fall to free cash and deal with it as a potential use for capital expenditures or supplementing stabilization and OPEB in the fall?
So I'd say let's answer that question at the end of the sessions after we've seen all the
Okay.
budgets and
Okay,
know that
If there's
there's
a
some
need
potential
somewhere.
there, yeah.
okay.
That would be my recommendation. I'm not speaking up for anyone.
Makes sense.
Sorry.
Shall we defer the vote till after all three presentations?
I think defer the vote and see where the other budgets are going.
That's the consensus. Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank
Yeah.
you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
And welcome to Tri-County.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you so much. It's a great school also,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jim, you want to give us a little introduction on Norfolk County, and then we'll have our guests come up?
I believe.
Guest is online.
The guest is online.
Screen, I see
Yeah.
it up there.
Okay.
So, Norfolk County Agricultural High School is the next one up. You're gonna see a bit of a bump in assessments there. I believe it went from either 25 or 2,200 a student, and they're talking about increasing it, I believe it's to 42,
I think it was 43 something?
42, 44 per
Yeah.
student. And the difference that I estimated, I estimated their budget at the time to be $159,500. I based that off of $5,500 per student at 29 students. Because at the time, they were talking about increasing it even more. After speaking to the county administrator, he said you likely won't go up that much in 1 year, but expect to go up within the next few years by that much. So it's close to the 5,500, but it's a little off. So the difference is about 36,424 over what I budgeted on this one. So, and I note that I believe they just voted it, or we just got notified on February 15th. February 15th. A notice was sent to Superintendent Goff. John, can you hear us?
You're muted.
Muted.
You're muted.
There you go.
There you go.
Yes. Welcome.
Can we hear him?
Thank you.
There.
Thank you, Jim, and other members of the Finance Committee. I regret that I can't be with you in person tonight. Hopefully I can make the next one and sit at that chair, sit on that hot seat like Karen and Dan just did.
questions for Aggie?
You probably already know,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
As you probably know, I'm new to the position, like Karen at Tri-County, started on July 1st, and John Wallace, who's our new business manager, started after the school year began. So this is our first go-round working with you folks in this bailiwick.
Well, welcome.
Yes, welcome. Larry, you saw your hand first?
Thank you.
I have a question. In a note from the town administrator, it said it was going from 2,200 to 5,500 per student, but you mentioned something about 42.
Sure. So the county administrator advised me that they may consider 5,500 per student after voicing concerns. I voiced my concern about such a drastic jump. I know other area managers had the same concern. They decided to make it 42, 44.
I guess it begs the question, why such a 22 to 44, and why were they willing to give up, not keep it at 55, do we know? 5,500?
This is John Wallace from Norfolk County. I'm the business manager at Norfolk County. I missed an introduction when John was talking, but he and I are both here from the high school, the agricultural high school. The 5,500 was just a worst case estimate. You know, John and I were about to embark on a study about what would be possible to charge and what would make sense to charge. And we had to get our tuition approved by our school board in the February 9th meeting. So the December letter was never really our intention. It was a attempt on our part to give you guys a heads up so that you would be prepared for kind of a worst case scenario, which is what we considered the 5,500 to be. But John and I had given to Jim before the meeting a PowerPoint which walked through how we ended up with the fee that we ended up with for this year. So I'd be glad to go over that, or if you guys have looked at it already and have questions. But
Yeah, if you can enlighten us, because some of us have gotten it, some of us haven't seen it.
all right, does your the person running your meeting have the ability to put that up for people to see?
Do we have a copy that we can?
I don't have a copy.
Don't have a copy handy?
No.
Don't have a copy handy to put up.
I can share my screen if it's got one.
Do you have it to share? Or-
No, we never received it.
Okay, all righty.
We don't have it.
Don't have it handy to share.
Okay, well, I guess I could walk through, and it's not possible for Sharon either at the web. Like, basically, John and I embarked on a study. We hired a consultant, a guy that some of you may know, Charlie Lyons from Lyons Consulting, and he did the analysis of the law regarding what vocational school or agricultural schools in this particular case could charge. We analyzed where we wanted to be and where we thought we should be from a fiscally responsible standpoint. The school had been in the last couple of years, again, predating both John and I, had been running a structural deficit where the tuition that we were collecting both in and out of county wasn't sufficient to cover the cost of educating our students, including our capital costs, because we had done a fairly significant project in 2016, it completed in 2016, and we're paying those right now in the debt service costs, particularly for that stuff. So we commissioned the study. We wanted to put the school on sound financial footing going forward. We wanted to be fair to both in and out of county. Of course, this is mostly an in-county discussion, but you should know, and in the PowerPoint that John and I sent around, out of county pays a significant amount for education. They basically pay for the actual cost of it, which in FY23 is going to be $24,000. So they're paying $24,000 per student out of county. But in county, we're very sensitive to the fact that you guys have an assessment. We're very sensitive that this is one of the benefits of being in Norfolk County that you receive. So we endeavored to make it an amount that was as small as would meet the like I said, financial requirements of the school so that we could get back to a situation where we had a modest surplus each year and began to make savings towards capital improvements in the future. So that's how we ended up with what is a two-part fee, basically. There's a base fee of $2,500 for all students in county, and then there's a capital fee, which is the difference between the 44 and the 2,500, which is $1,744 per student for FY23. So that's to cover our debt service costs related to our capital improvements that we've had that we're still paying off. And this was considered by the school and endorsed by the consultant, and then of course approved by the trustees as the best way for the school to be set up going forward, is having a base fee that we charged in county and then having a capital fee that would fluctuate based on our capital costs that we've incurred. So that's how we got to the 4244, and where we were coming from was 2,200. But if you looked, the 2,200 that we would charged in county towns has basically been almost unchanged from when it was introduced in 2011. Our first fee was $1,500. And so over the subsequent 10 years, the fee basically changed almost not at all from 1,500 to 2,200 while our costs were going up. And that's kind of contributed to us being in a structural deficit position. So John and I, with a lot of encouragement from the county and the county administrator, took it upon ourselves to try to resolve that situation. And that's how we got to the $4,400 charge for next year.
Questions? Ally?
Thank you for joining us tonight. Having the agricultural school in Walpole, I think, is just a tremendous asset. The jump from 2,500 to 4,244, and I appreciate the explanation, is a bit much. I mean, I think in retrospect, those capital projects, the campus is wonderful. What the improvements that have been made are fantastic, but why weren't the various towns more involved when those capital projects were coming, that we would be paying the costs? It's quite a significant jump for 1 year. I appreciate the school, I appreciate the curriculum. I think it is a wonderful asset and that students have the opportunity to attend there. I just, I'm a little disappointed that the jump is so high in 1 year.
And we're certainly not insensitive to that fact. We deliberated long and hard as to what this number should look like. But as John mentioned, in 11 years' time, the in-county tuition has only gone up by a grand total of $700. And even with the capital improvement aside, it doesn't take a great leap of faith to understand that our costs did not keep up with our revenues. And we regret that the number is as high as it is, but in order to put our fiscal house in order, that's the number we think is fair, and that's the number that's going to move us in the right direction towards clearing out the structural deficit that currently exists, which is a pretty significant number.
And I can appreciate that. Is there a plan going forward so that these, costs of everything is going up, educating the students, the costs will be going up. But is there a plan, I know you're new to the school, so that these increases are more advanced notice, knowing that each year it's more likely a 2% increase or something of a much smaller scale?
Yeah, I think both John and I have a little bit firmer footing as we move forward in our jobs here in Walpole at Norfolk Aggie, and we have a couple of ideas in the works to provide you with as much information as soon as we possibly can about our budget deliberations, to include forming a budget task force to look at this as well as other fiscal issues that concern the Aggie. We're also looking at developing other sources of revenue that might help to supplement our budget process every year.
My final question, are there other capital projects that are coming up in the future that are of a large scale?
Right now, we don't have any plans. The capital that we're charging now should remain unchanged unless we until it goes away. But for the short term, the next 5 years, the capital number won't change unless we engage in a brand new project, a capital project. There are certainly parts of the school that do need work, specifically buildings that do need work. I think we're going to try to fund things ourselves. We'll certainly be, as John said, looking for new revenue sources like fundraising from alumni in our foundation, which we haven't really done much of, but we do think there's a lot of potential there to keep our needs down in the capital area. But I would say we're a few years away at least from making a change to our capital assessment. I think I'm really comfortable that that capital assessment won't change for at least a few years. But we don't have any hard plans right now. We have a couple of areas that are weaknesses of the school, structural, from a building standpoint, we have a few weaknesses. I think the county is pitching in some money too that relates to ARPA and other areas. They do have a capital budget which they've allotted to us every year. So I'm optimistic that we won't have a big capital need in the medium term. By that, I mean 5 years. I don't expect this number to change a lot in the next 5 years.
Thank you.
Quick question on the quote-unquote capital. Is that strictly a debt service? And for how many years do you see that debt service running out? Is that a 10, 15, 20-year loan package, or how is it?
It's, first of all, yes, it's strictly debt service. It's 100% our debt service divided by the number of students we have. You could actually, based on the materials I sent around, you could calculate that number yourself, as both of those pieces of information are in that packet. It's a series of loans of different lengths. So there are some, I think, as short as 15 years and we're into them. And there are some as long as 30 years, all of which have begun. Next year, we just entered a $1.2 million loan, relatively small, this year. So it's going to be in our FY23 debt service run rate. But there are things that end probably 10, 12 years from now, maybe the first one ends. So it'll be pretty stable for that period of time unless it goes up, and then it will take quite a bit to run off.
Okay. Lisa?
Yeah, I wonder what exactly is this structural deficit that you keep talking about? Is it simply the loans and what sounds like an enormous capital campaign that you embarked upon previously, and now you're coming around and saying, we can't afford to do this? Or, when you say structural deficit over and over, does it mean you don't have enough money to do the things you're already doing, or enough money to do the things that you want to do, or enough money to pay the debts that you have incurred? What is the structural deficit?
Well, the structural deficit is the operating expenses of the school, including debt service. Debt service is around $1 million. So we have about $1 million of debt service on a budget of $15 million. So it's not insignificant, but the operating expenses and the debt service of the school are in excess of the revenues of the school by several $100,000, and have been for the last few years. We, at one point with the county, had a surplus of over $2 million of reserves that we had built up. But in the last 5 years since this capital project was depleted that reserve all the way down to just a few $100,000 left in our reserve.
I want to make sure I heard correctly. So you've been running at a deficit for the last handful of years?
Yes, true.
Okay.
Yep.
We've been utilizing our reserves for the last handful of years. I'd say half a dozen or less, maybe 4 or 5 years where we've been in a deficit position. And that gets to why we felt we needed to make the change completely and fully. So this is not an incremental change, which we're going to add to next year. This is getting us to the place that we think shouldn't change significantly going forward. So at least you're worried that a move from 2,200 to 4,200 is going to be followed by something else next year. It's certainly not our intention to do that, and nothing in our plans would suggest that we'd make significant changes to the in-county total tuition, or total cost, I should say, if you think of it as a base rate and a capital rate. I don't expect that to change significantly, at least in the next few years, while we're sorting out our capital situation.
So if I can ask a second question, you had also mentioned at the very beginning of your presentation that you spoke with the Lions Consulting Group about what it would be reasonable to charge, as a school like this. So what were some other amounts that other agricultural schools are charging?
Well, we didn't approach it from what do other people charge, but I do have, I mean, it was really approach from what does the law allow and what did the consultant feel like would be a reasonable amount to charge in his professional opinion. He has a vocational education background. But as a comparison, the school that's most similar to ours is the Bristol County Agricultural School, which is the next county over from us, which has a structure identical to ours, a county-owned agricultural school. The fee that they charge for in-county students is slightly higher base than us. They charge $2,800 as their base, but they charge an almost $6,000 capital fee. So the charge that they charge their in-county students is almost $9,000. So they charge $8,700 per in-county student. So that would probably be the best comparison.
That's a comparison. Can you give me one or two more?
Well, there are only 4 agricultural schools in the state of Massachusetts, and the other 2 actually aren't particularly comparable to us. Well, one of them is a combined agricultural and vocational school called Essex, and that's on the North Shore, and the other one is affiliated with Smith College out in Western Massachusetts. So they both have pretty different circumstances, financial circumstances. So that's only one that is a real good comparison, and neither of them are county schools either. So they have a different structure.
Thanks.
Other questions? Yes, Mark.
I'm curious, Tri-County mentioned that each town in the North Fork County, I may have it wrong, is charged a fee, and then the difference is made up in student tuition. Does North Fork Aggie, do you receive a certain amount from each town to maintain the school?
No, our structure is a little bit different. There is a required contribution that's calculated by the state, but that's paid for and more by Norfolk County itself. So basically, Norfolk County is committed to paying a certain amount towards the school's expenses. That amount changes by 2.5% a year, has changed by 2.5% a year, goes up 2.5% a year every year. Again, it was in the materials I sent around, but the amount that we get from Norfolk County or are expecting from Norfolk County for next year is about $4.3 million.
4.3, so that's one revenue source, and then how much are the student tuitions each year?
Student tuitions, combined student tuitions are probably, again, it's in the material that I sent around because I sent around the detailed budget. But if you combine in-county and out-of-county, it's around $9 million. So we get about $9 million from in and out of county.
Okay, so 9 million from the tuitions, another 4 million from the county. So
Yep.
about 13 million. Are there additional revenue sources?
Sure, we get about $1.7 million in state Chapter 70 aid, in addition to all that stuff. And then there's another $0.7 million or $700,000 from other sources of revenue, nutrition revenue, a summer enrichment program, student activity fees. That's our $15 million budget or $15.5 million budget.
Jim, does Walpole provide services for the school?
What kind of services?
Like, do we do
Fire,
plowing or
ambulance.
fire or anything?
We don't plow, but, the police or fire gets called out there, ambulance.
But we don't charge them anything for these services?
No.
Okay. And then I guess the other question I'm wondering is the revenue minus your expenses. You mentioned you're now formulating in a reserve each year. What percentage is how much would the reserve be?
Our budget this year has a real modest reserve. It's about $300,000, so it's about 2%. But we're in a contract negotiation right now with our teachers, with our professional teachers union. So it's hard. We haven't agreed to a cost of living increase yet with them, or even begun to discuss a cost of living increase with them. So I'm not even sure we'll end up with that $300,000 surplus. So it's pretty modest. I mean, it's just a start. I mean, we've been in a situation where we've had a negative number for a handful of years. So John and I were not looking to make real progress towards building up a capital, but instead to put ourselves back in the positive and begin a kind of a culture and a thinking that we'll have a surplus and shooting for a surplus. I mean, 5 to 10% is a good surplus number.
Right.
5% is target for a lot of places, and the county commissioner through the county administrator have said that they're going to shoot for 10%. They're hoping to have 10% surpluses in the budgets that they put together.
Okay, thank you. I'm all set, Mark.
Have you seen any drastic swings in enrollment over the last 4 or 5 years? Or is it pretty much a consistent number of students attending?
Well, part of developing those new buildings that we did in 2016 was to increase our enrollment to 600 students. We felt like that was the number that the staffing and the facility could hold. So we've been working our way up towards 600 students. This year, it was around 585 students, and we are working towards increasing that maybe, or even just sticking with 585 as we work bigger freshman class in. As far as application, we have a similar story to tell as Tri-County. We have a historically high number of applicants to the school now. We have really something, I think John might know better than I because he's more involved in the application process, but I know it's a tremendous amount of interest in the school that makes us very confident that we are going to get the number of students we need to keep our per student costs where we want them to be, and also indication that there's a tremendous demand for what we're fortunate enough to be offering, as a way of not just a vocational education, but also an agricultural education, which is, as I mentioned, quite rare actually in Massachusetts.
We have over 300 applicants this year to the Aggie. So I don't have longitudinal numbers to compare that to share with you tonight. I can certainly provide you with those, but it's a higher number than we're accustomed to.
And they're obviously not all getting in.
They're not all getting in, no. Unfortunately, we will have to make some tough decisions in the next couple of months. And not everybody will have a seat.
Any other questions? I don't see any.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, Brian.
Through you, Mark. Just out of the students at the school, how many towns in Norfolk County do you have students from?
28.
28, thank you. And then have you met with any other towns, finance committee, and what has their reaction been to this increase? It's great having the school here and what the school does offer to the students, but I'm just curious what the other reaction from the other towns has been.
This is our first finance committee meeting. We have another one scheduled for Wednesday. Those are the only two we've been invited to so far. John and I have had phone conversations with a couple of town managers from other in-county towns and cities. And they were, if I can characterize it in a general term, on fact-finding mission. There was a Q&A session, and I think for the most part, everybody understood the position we were in and that we were trying to make it right, if I could sum it up in that way.
Okay, thank you. And then lastly, how can I get a copy of the budget? It's tough for me to vote on something that I can't see. It's great that you're sharing this information, but I don't have the full story to actually ask even great questions.
Yeah, could you actually resend a copy of that to Jim so he can get it out to all of us?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, we can do that.
We can do that.
Yeah, I sent him a copy just this morning, so he probably right at the top of his email.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. All set, Mark.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much, gentlemen. Lovely presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for your support.
Alrighty.
Good evening. I think everyone has a hard copy of the presentation, so what Mike and I will do this evening is review the FY '23 budget information, and then we'll follow that with the review of the FTE personnel report, and that's in your other packets, and Mike will bring that to your attention where that's located. And then we'll review the comprehensive budget sheet. It's a nice way to kind of bring it back full circle. And, you know, you may have additional questions. If there's any additional questions that come up, you know, whether it's tomorrow, next week, you know, whenever, please don't hesitate. You can either go through Mark can go through us, or, you know, don't hesitate to send us an email, give us a phone call. You know, Mike and I are here to answer those questions. So looking at this, the budget that we will present to you tonight will hopefully take our students beyond what's been accomplished during the most challenging time of what we call COVID education. Hopefully we're through the woods, we have to be. We are tremendously proud of the work that was and is necessary to support full in-person learning this year when we opened our doors, while at the same time managing all of the protocols and the contact tracing to mitigate risk and to maximize the safety of our students and our staff. To say that it's been a heck of a 3 years is an understatement. I never thought of coming into this position in my first 3 years with what was before me, but I was extremely fortunate, and I am extremely fortunate to have, you know, wonderful students, phenomenal staff, great Walpole families, and then obviously our town boards and committees. So thank you for that support. It's greatly appreciated, and fourth time's a charm, right? That we can get to a sense of normalcy. So Mike will take you through the slide on handout on page 2. So that next page.
Okay. So I'm on this page, FY '23 discussion. So on the top of the list is the FY '22 total budget, which totals, for those who don't have this in front of them, $49,113,775. That's made up of the FY '22 personnel budget, which was $42,299,098. The FY '23 increase for the personnel budget is a total of $2,803,000 total FY '23 increase. And as you can see from the asterisks, the special education budget, which I presented many times to you as a board, that generally does not have a reduction in it this year due to a large roll-off of tuitions. That budget was reduced by $602,000, which is helping to offset our budget increase. So our total FY '23 personnel budget request is $45,102,098. Our FY '22 goods and service budget is $6,814,677, and our FY '23 goods and service decrease is that $402,000, which is the net off of the $602 versus some increases in our central budget. That gives us an FY '23 total goods and service budget of $6,412,677. So the net increase overall for our budget is $2,401,000. And that gives us a total FY '23 school budget request of $51,514,775. And that was voted by the school committee on January 27th in a school committee meeting. The town administrator's increase is $2,599,000. So that puts the town administrator's budget at $51,394,654, which gives us a gap of $120,121. We have been in this position many times before. I've been in front of you many times before with much larger deficits than that. We've worked very well with the town administrator this year, and we are confident that that gap can be closed with combined efforts, or in a way that we've generally done in the past by working collaboratively. So are there any questions before we move on to the next slide?
Denny first.
Clarification on what you said, the 602,000 reduction, is that, so did that happen this year?
So that happened, that's
Did
going
people
into
move-
next year. There'll be kids graduating, the total budget tuition request
Okay.
drops down.
So it's dropping the overall budget by 602,000 for special ed.
For that portion, right?
Perfect, thank
So
you.
is that the biggest contributor to the reduction in the cost side
Correct.
and the services? Gotcha. Okay. Larry?
In the past, and maybe you still, I'm not sure, usually kept like a cushion, because people, new students, special ed kids could, or any other students could come into the town. Do you still maintain a cushion to cover any unexpected entrance?
So when cushion's a loose term, I would say when we budget to the best of our abilities at that moment in time. The numbers are conservative, so we're not gonna push it and risk it and then wind up with a real heavy downside. So we do budget for the kids that we know are coming, and so I would consider that conservative. We do not take chances on, well, maybe the student won't come here, or, maybe the student will be in district rather than out of district. We budget based on where kids are and where their placements are.
I'll rephrase it, contingency. Be a better way.
I think I'll get more into that later. You'll see some good news for you related to that.
The other question is that the net increase is 2,401,000. The town administrator's increase is 2,599,000. To me, that's about 400,000, but the gap is 120. Did the town administrator start at a different level?
No, I mean, basically that's the net off between the two. He's at 51
Oh,
million.
the 600, okay.
Right.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions on the top level? See any? Please.
Okay,
Yep.
if you turn to page 3, I want to talk about personnel. This is broad, but then I'm going to get deeper into it. So for a total of $1,303,000, there'll be additional 12.5 positions are requested to meet the needs of Walpole Public School District. And they fall into these categories, these 5 categories below that are outlined here. So I just want to mention the categories, and then I'm going to drill down to show you how the positions are focused on these specific categories. So the categories are district-wide or free full-day K, special education, targeted support services, and I'll talk about what that means in a second, STEM, that's science, technology, engineering, and math, and then we can't forget about literacy and writing. So if you look at that, that totals the 1.3. So if you turn the page, in order to drill down into what do these 12.5 make up? Well, the first one is full-day K, so you'll see the amount for $348,000. What does that do? That eliminates tuition. So that not only will cover the cost of the remaining kindergarten teachers who will need to move into the operating budget, because if you remember that right now they're covered by the tuition fee, and the increase in the K aides is 4.23 to be in these classrooms. It's important to note that the K aides are dependent on the enrollment. This is the max number of K aides that we would need. Again, this will reach our district and community goal of free full-day K that I believe we started back in 2017. Right now, over 90% in the state, schools in the state are at free full-day K. So that's a true success story for us. The second bracket is special education. You'll see that totals $245,000. Those are 4 positions to address the growing needs of our program, and it allows us to continue to keep our students in in-district setting. So those are programs at our Daniel Feeney Preschool, Boyden, they're known as the Varied Instructional Program, Fisher is the District Learning Program, and MSN at Byrd Middle School. The department has done a tremendous amount of work in this area in keeping our students in district. Dr. John Quealy, he gave a great presentation of all of our special in-district programs at the school committee meeting prior to the break. I think it might have been a bit overshadowed by my COVID update and masking recommendation. But if you would like a copy of the slides, please just send me an email. I'm happy to provide it for you because it's nothing short of amazing. I mean, if you've been in this district for the past 20 years, or for some of us 30 years or more, the amount of in-district programs that we've been able to build to keep students in Walpole has been phenomenal. The next section is target support services. So you'll look at that, and that totals $230,000. What that is our English language learning teacher, and it's actually is going to be like a double position. It's a teacher and then also a coordinator. So what that position does is it serves the needs of a growing population of our L students. And these students are coming to us with increasingly complex educational and then also social emotional needs. Some of them, or many of them, are coming into the elementary schools with no schooling, especially with COVID, never having been in an elementary school before. With this position, this person will also help with direct service, but also provide support avenues to both our staff and, equally as important, our families. We currently have 148 Ls and about 68 or 70 we call them FLAPs, for FELs, formerly English proficient. And actually, this past month, we've already had 5 students move into Walpole that are classified as English language learners. So we need to continue to address these changes to our student population and invest in the delivery models and the resources to meet the needs of our learners. The next is our MECO, that's just a 0.5 position, is an increase of 20 hours. An academic advisor to service our students. Next is a 1.0 counselor to be shared between the middle schools to help offset the increase in counselor caseload demands, as you can imagine, right now at both middle schools. And then finally, in terms of targeted support, is our work study. You might have remembered, if you were on Finance Committee a couple of years ago, that we talked about this. It's to facilitate a new work study program that'll help reduce, the dropout rate and students, in some cases, prevent them from leaving Walpole. There's a growing need for a more robust work study program that's really geared towards students who may not intend going straight into college. And we've been running a program on a very limited scale, maybe 2 to 5 students for the past several years. And these students spend a semester participating in internship while taking their math and their English. There is a possibility that this might even morph into offering night school classes, which could be used by students both inside and outside of the district. We're just hearing from students and parents, and also NEASC accreditation, that this should be more of a priority. We have held a couple meetings with a program called YouthWorks, who partner with MassHire. I don't know if anybody's heard of MassHire before. They currently work with Dedham in the Needham school system. It's great opportunity, it's free. And they help us with shadow opportunities, students going into trades, students who might be going to community college, working with us on summer internship opportunities, and providing some work-based plan. And they actually help track students after they leave our high school. So it's an exciting opportunity for us. The next bucket is our STEM, our science, technology, and engineering. And you'll see that totals $340,000. What that is the elementary, that you'll see that's not a typo, that is a 0 in it, but it is looking to increase and to get elementary STEM teachers, 1 in each building, and that's through a consolidation. And that will increase focus on literacy standards with a focus on our STEM standards. Actually, Sue Lawson, thank you, Sue, sent me a great article about media literacy and online reasoning and critical thinking. And, that's really important of what we need to do for our younger, with so much online that's coming in, to distinguish fact from fiction, and the information or the misinformation that's coming their way. We do some of it in our middle schools, but it's important to even start this at the elementary school level. If you haven't looked up the Pacific Northwest Tree Octopus, look it up, because that's how we start with our middle school students. And it's an online resource that they use, and when they look at it, it looks real, and they buy it hook, line, and sinker. And it's nothing but fiction, so it's pretty interesting. So thanks, Sue, for sending that article along. The 2.0 STEM teachers in the middle school, that's really to address our gaps, our COVID gaps, but also maintain continuity of our STEM instruction. So we've got this new middle school, but we need to be able to have this base in the elementary school to see the continuity, continue in middle school, and then continue through the high school level. We don't want them to start something and not have the beginning and not have the end. And finally, the literacy and the writing is both an English language art and a history coordinator. That's known as humanities. And that's to offer additional instructional leadership, really through analysis and planning and the direction of these departmental activities. It was a huge recommendation in our English language arts audit that we had. And Shannon Finley, she's the English language arts elementary coordinator, and she's doing an exemplary job right now in all of the reading and the writing that these children are doing. And we need to make sure that they continue this strong base as they go into the middle school. And finally is the high school English teacher, and that's to backfill a retirement that was not placed due to budget constraints. So when you look at that, that's 12.5 positions totaling 1.3. And then finally, just to wrap it up, before we stop for questions, the budget, as you can see, really extends our investment. It builds on this strong foundation. It's a comprehensive curriculum. It's investing in equitable services. It's for all our children. It's closing the achievement gaps. It's our social emotional well-being. It's inclusion. It's really the academic success of all. It's, rising tide lifts all boats. This aligns with our strategic plan, our school improvement plans, all of our leadership goals that, we have been working on this year, and even our opening plan when we opened in late August. So before we get into the next piece of the FTE personnel report, maybe we can stop there if there are any questions.
Any questions on new positions? We'll start with Ally, then Larry, then.
Thank you. As someone who is on the full-day kindergarten task force, I am so ecstatic to see the funding in this budget for full-day kindergarten for all students. I think even more so now than ever, the students need it. The kids that are coming into kindergarten because of the COVID-related deficits, education is just very different for kindergarten right now. So the fact that we hopefully will be able to get all of our students in there throughout the town, I think is just instrumental and fantastic. The special education teachers, I just more wanted to make a point that reduction in special education, it was a significant reduction, over 600,000. There are wonderful out-of-district placement programs throughout the state in Massachusetts, but the programs we built within our schools really, so investing $245,000 to continue the programs that we have within our school system is just a cost savings, because that really is significant, over $600,000 of students, I'm assuming, are 22 and graduating from their programming. And then a few years ago for the ELL coordinator, it was more that there were some state guidelines. Is that still something with the English as a second language and what we have to offer?
It's not a mandate, but it's just the numbers are increasing. We were at, the percentage that we were at, it's just the numbers are going up, just like even 5 students in the last month. That's a lot. And with little or no English, and then also some emotional support that these students, the baggage that they're coming with.
I can imagine. My final piece was work study. You mentioned Dedham. Were there other towns that are successful in implementing this type of position in? Is it really that commonplace now for schools to have this type of work study coordination going on?
Yeah, I can't give you names specific, but Dedham and Needham are the ones that are using, mass hire, and then obviously you need the position in order to work with these groups in order to help these students so that they're successful. And you've got students who, like we mentioned Tri-County, they go to Tri-County and it's great and they're successful. And then we have students who come back. And then we have students who want to continue at Walpole High, but they're just struggling with those opportunities, and this will give them the opportunities that they need. And then to have the opportunity of maybe getting into a night school would be fantastic for some
So
of us.
focus more on the individualized education.
Mhm.
That was all.
Larry?
On the elementary STEM teachers consolidation, I guess I missed that. What, 150, is that to, what do you mean by consolidation, I guess?
Well, we don't need, let's put it this way, we don't need any bodies, but so that's why it's not an FTE. But in terms of staffing, you reallocate your resources, so we would reallocate.
In other words, pay them differently per se because they're doing STEM? Is that-
Yeah, you can add, you can collapse, it's just, you're reallocating
Okay,
positions.
repurposing, in a sense. Is it tough getting folks? I mean, then you're gonna add a couple spots, and I'm wondering how I think every school, probably district, is trying to get STEM-type education
I think
ramped
everybody's
up.
trying
And
to get everything, right?
so how is that, what's the
Yeah,
challenge?
we actually, may have some staff that have these certifications, that want these positions, so you move those, and then you backfill with classroom
And that's
teachers.
part of the consolidation, okay.
And that's why we have a strong professional development in the district, so we want to use distributed leadership and empower our leaders to be able to go on and take these roles. That's a success for us.
Maybe think, do we pay for continuing ed for, to get a master, well, they all have to get masters,
Yeah,
I guess.
there's, as part of the collective bargaining, there's $90,000 in, it's a pot. And they can take that, and then you divide it up. So if there are not as many people taking courses, then you might get more of a percentage.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Denny?
Yeah, the $120,000 gap between your budget and the town administrator's budget, I would say that is the lowest I've seen in a number of years. But it's also in part because of a $600,000 reduction in the special ed. Do we see that coming? And I've been doing this a long time, so I know you really can't see, but was part of that because people graduated? Was it the in-town programs that we've added? I mean, is this something you think will carry over, or should we be better preparing? That part always worries me.
Can we table that to like the end, because that's part of the explanation of the
Absolutely.
comprehensive budget. Is
Yeah,
that-
it's a really good question.
Yeah, it is.
But I think we can elaborate more on it at the end.
Wonderful.
And plus, you're still open for enrollments that affect the upcoming budget year until April 1st.
Yeah.
So over the next 4 or 5 weeks, somebody could move into town and they're automatically on the
Oh,
budget.
no, I
So, yeah.
long time of.
In Massachusetts, outside of Massachusetts, all bets are off. It can
Yeah.
happen at any
At any
time.
time, right.
Yeah. I'll wait.
Okay.
Any other questions on the staff? Yes, Josette?
It seems in some ways that history is repeating itself, because ancient history ago, there used to be work-study programs in the high schools and such, that kids could get out of school at noontime, go work part-time, and get hours and all of that. So it seems like in some ways, we're coming full circle back to that, giving them the skills they need to be able to survive and excel when they leave the high school, which is a good thing, in my opinion. My other question is on the ESSER, the Elementary Secondary School Emergency Fund. How much did you receive, have you received it, and where was it redirected, or what was it used for in general?
We're talking about the COVID relief money?
Yes,
So there's 3 ESSERs, you know that, right?
no, I don't.
Okay, so
That's why I'm
I have
asking
a
you the
whole,
question.
so I have this whole spreadsheet at the end I was gonna go over with you if you wanna know about
Okay, wait till the
COVID.
end. Wait till the end.
It's a lot, but I can
Okay.
kinda summarize it at a higher level.
In the McKinney-Vento, I noticed that there's nothing going forward. Is that just because people have graduated out of the system and you're not having to provide the transportation?
I think it's just really a snapshot in time. We just don't have homeless students that need that service currently, so it hasn't been a big burden, right? We were very worried about that, and it was actually much higher at one point.
Yes, it was.
It has kind of quieted down.
Okay, thank you.
But the state hasn't changed their approach as to who's responsible. Okay. 'Cause I see Nancy back there, she's got stuff on the agenda for later. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, Mark?
The full-day kindergarten at 348,000. So what is it we currently cover?
So we cover 2.5 teachers.
No, I'm sorry, I meant for the parent of a kindergarten student. Are we paying half their tuition now, or are they paying 25% of
They
it?
pay, well, it's hard to say. They pay $13.50 currently for full-day K to support the teachers that are in that revolving account, which is covered by the tuitions we collect.
But if they didn't pay, they'd only be going half a day.
They'd only be going
a day's
half day,
free.
so we're only mandated for half a day. And so what happens is, and we've talked about this, I think Al, you'd remember this, like, it became the haves and have-nots. And the only people that wound up, and that up to this, well, last year as well, were the only people that couldn't afford it were in a half day. There was very few people who said, I would really choose to have my child home with me for half day, for that other half of a day.
Okay, so it basically works out to $13.50 per student? So that equates up to the 348,000.
No, that is 250,000. The additional amount is for the teacher aide. So as we bring these students back into these classes and we have all full-day K, the aides that are in those classes, we would increase them to provide support for the bigger enrollments in these classes. And that's that's the other portion of that.
Okay, just in general, the student numbers, are they roughly staying the same?
Yeah, I have them at,
So these increases here then, they're not due to increase in number of students, they're due to, we're providing additional services for the current numbers that we have.
Remember,
Yeah,
We're not gonna charge for those additional services going forward.
No, I'm sorry, so I'm not talking about the kindergartens anymore. I'm just talking about, in general, with adding all these positions, it's not due to a increase in number of students, it's we're enhancing the services that we're providing.
That's correct. He's saying overall.
yeah, overall, yeah, and we don't even know, like, the enrollment, the K enrollment started in January. It's really interesting about the census because we usually rely on the census, but there's probably, you know, as of now, we probably have about 215 kindergarten students enrolled. But we still have, there were 100 that weren't on the census who registered. And then we still have about over 55 who are currently on the census who have not registered. So, you know, it fluctuates.
Okay.
We'll see.
With getting to the special education, the 602 versus the 245, was the 602 saved because students were going out of district to a school and they no longer do that?
They graduated in most cases.
Right,
yeah.
so it's that's where the savings is, they're not out of the system, and you're adding 245 to the system. So we're not necessarily preventing students from going out of the system because we're investing here. You see what I'm getting at?
I think it's twofold. I think we have a large number of students graduating by chance, right? And that's that 600. But we are also investing in our programs specifically, so our more higher needs programs. And those are very expensive placements when those students go out. And so we're investing in there, solidifying it. We actually have large enrollment growth in the VIP program, which is a very significant program. And we've had to hire MSNs. We hired one this year because our numbers started at 4 and now we're at 16. And these are students in a lot of cases that have a one-to-one ESP with them, plus an MSN teacher, a moderate special needs teacher. So it's a complex, expensive program, but in lieu of going out of district, it's far less money. So we are investing as well as being fortunate that these large number of kids are graduating.
Okay, and then with the elementary STEM teachers, the 150, would this basically be considered stipends?
No.
Then what's the 150?
It's more of elevating existing people up to a STEM, with the STEM classification to run the programs, and then feeding their vacant positions with replacements.
And a reallocation.
They have to get certification for the STEM
There's a-
programs, right?
I mean, is it, we're paying people, we're paying for their certifications? I just don't understand what it is we're doing.
if you look at it, there's a zero, right? So we're with existing people, so there may be a consolidation in there. We haven't had those conversations with staff, so we don't wanna talk about exactly who those people are.
Okay.
But that's that, so.
Okay.
So the people we're hiring are more expensive than the ones we currently have. The total number is the same, but we're gonna have to pay
Right.
more to get those more qualified individuals.
Okay, and then if I can just ask, I don't know if we're getting into that now, what happened to the nutrition director, the assistant nutrition director?
You went to the FTE chart, and I can't see what you're looking
Yeah, I
at.
was just going down through.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing
Okay.
next.
All right, I'm good, thanks.
Let's go to Lucy first. then
Yeah, you
back
guys
to
looked it over.
What's that, 150 though?
Yeah,
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I'm beating a dead horse here, but when Larry asked about it, and Mark, I thought, okay, I still have to ask about that 150 as well. So I get it now that you are hiring, I think, people to do the STEM in the elementary school, and they're more expensive people. How many?
We're not hiring any
Okay,
new, there's no new people.
okay,
How
but
about that?
changing the job for these people, how many, can I ask?
One at each elementary school.
Okay, so 4 people getting new responsibilities that accumulate to pretty much the gap in the budget.
Correct.
Hmm.
Correct.
And a STEM teacher is paid more than a non-STEM teacher because, why?
Well, sometimes there's not as many of them, and the qualifications and the certifications and what they're supposed to be doing in terms of science, technology, engineering, math, and then also you have that media literacy that goes on, so therefore that's another certification or licensure that you need on top of that.
And in an elementary school, don't all the teachers have to teach science and math?
No, because this is, if you look at it, like, for example, it would be not the classroom teacher teaching it, it would be another teacher, so it would be someone that they go to. So like, let's say they're going to a music classroom, and this would be a course or a class for them. So it's an engineering, it could be an engineering course. It could be the introduction of robotics and working in tandem with digital literacy. So it's not a math teacher, so to speak, or a science teacher, so to speak. It's looking at our STEM, our 21st century learning.
Okay.
So that they have those skills and they can get a base when they get to the middle school, instead of not coming with that. I mean, we're introducing some things, like you'll see like on the front, those B-bots, but, you know, there's so much more that these students need to be able to deliver that, get that base by the time they get to the middle school.
So would you say that, you know, the 4th grade teacher might not teach science at all, or might teach some
No,
science
they'll still teach
units?
science, they'll still
and they'll-
teach their
okay.
whole science curriculum, they have the frameworks, they have the standards. But let's say, for example, they're doing research, right? And I was talking about the article that from Sue, the media literacy and the misinformation. So we have some of that at the middle school, but instead they would go to that, and that might be part of that course before then they go ahead and get to that research with that classroom teacher.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Did you have a follow-up?
I just had a comment with the full-day kindergarten for all. Was it with the FTEs that our formula kind of changes once we are able to offer it for everyone in town, or no? I thought that before there was a cost with the state of kind of reimbursement or things once we got to that point.
So, yeah, we spend above the minimum, far above the minimum requirement that the state mandates. So that gap is causing us not to gain reimbursement based on how much we spend
Okay.
above.
And then I just had one little comment for the special education increase. And it's more of a personal kind of comment away of a parent, as a parent of a child who went through Walpole Schools as a high special needs cost. The investment piece, I guess unless you have gone through that IEP process, it can be complex to understand. But we have so many children graduating at 22 because 22 years ago, our special ed program wasn't what it was today. So we didn't have the programming within our schools that would be appropriate. And so when a parent comes to the table to develop the IEP, they're going to say, we don't have the programming available, this is not appropriate. The students then got placed out of district. And once a student is placed out of district, in general, it's very difficult to bring them back in. When parents, and because it's a partnership between the families and the school district. And so now that as we keep investing into our special education program, we're going to have less students that will need out-of-district placements because we have created such a robust program within our town.
So to that point, the 16 students that I was talking about in the VIP program, most of those, if not all of those kids would have been out of district. Because their needs are of that extent.
So just kind of to go on to what Mark was asking, and Denny, what you were asking,
No, that's
what
next.
do we expect in the future? How is this changed?
Yeah.
As we create this program, we can keep these students in district.
That's great, Ally. I didn't appreciate that. Thank you for adding that.
Actually, one other follow-up. Do we still have the opportunity to take in special needs from neighboring communities at a tuition basis so we can become an outplacement service to our neighbors?
We do, but we don't have any opportunities right now. So we've done that partnership with Norwood fairly often. It's just we're in a lull right now.
I know, I was looking at the overall
Yep.
comprehensiveness. I don't see any out-of-placement tuitions coming into us.
Yes.
So, okay.
When you say we're in a lull, because we filled the programs with Walpole students, or?
They don't have, Norwood
don't
doesn't have a
have,
student that would fit our programs.
Gotcha.
But they may have their own programs that work.
Yeah.
Okay. Ready? Yes.
I would just ask, we did it several years ago, some of us FinCom folks who are still here, we got to go to a school and see some of these programs, and
Impressive.
that's an eye-opener, to say the least. So if that's, I don't know if that's still allowed, you know, privacy and all that, but if it is, it's an opportunity to see what's going on and see it firsthand. It's
It's very
compelling,
eye-opening.
to say the least.
That's a good point.
I agree.
I just have one last question. So the English as a second language, I'm curious, just in general, is that something that's, because we've been adding teachers, adding resources, is it just a Walpole thing? Is it a Massachusetts thing? Is it one language over another? That, I'm just curious, like, what are the demographics that's causing this?
Yeah, we see a lot of students from Brazil. That's probably our highest population, but we were, even last year was like 3.5, we're up almost 4.5%. The state is up 11%, so you can see that they're increasing. So you can see, and not only that, like when you look at first language, not English, we're up to almost 11%. First language, not English. The state's at about 24%.
Wow.
Real- Okay, thanks.
I see Kathleen?
Yeah.
Yep, go ahead, Kathleen.
I just wanted to jump in, and I may be premature because you may cover this elsewhere, but with the English as a second language programming, are we looking at parents and families and doing evening classes at all? I thought a couple of years ago we talked about that.
Yeah, that's a good question, Kathleen. We have an LPAC. Due to COVID, it was very minimal, and Bill Hahn is an assistant superintendent, is in charge of that, and he is still working with an LPAC. It's just that it's been not as many people, obviously, due to COVID, but we're hoping to increase those numbers. And then also with this position is also to help work with those families too. To be able to reach out and do more, wraparound support for these families.
So perhaps adult ed language skills?
Yes.
Thank
What's an LPAC?
English Learner Pack, once you have a certain amount of students, by DESE mandate, you need to have an LPAC, I don't say it's a need, but, that's what we always say with DESE, and sometimes we complain about DESE, but that's where they got it right, we should be having, a pack when you have more than 100 families that.
Gotcha,
in your
thank you.
town.
I think we're good.
Mark, I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
Through you, first, Superintendent Goff, I just want to say thank you to you and your team for navigating the last 2 years as best you can. Nobody could see what was going to happen. I thought you did it brilliantly, and your communication was excellent, so thank you for that. With the new 12 and a half positions. Are they must-haves? Are they wants? It sounds like the STEM program's really taking off, which I'm excited about. Do you have to start in middle schools, elementary schools and middle schools this first go around?
Now, Brian, you know I'm going to say they're must-haves. They are must-haves. It's so we can reach all learners, close our gaps. It aligns with our plans, our strategic plans, our goals. So, yes.
All right, and one other question. I noticed in the special education, the drop mostly came down from the tuitions at private schools, but I saw a pretty significant increase in transportation. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so again, when I go through this list, you're gonna see that we're down a couple of drivers. It's been very hard to fill these positions. As everyone knows, the labor market's really tight these days. So we are really struggling to replace 2 drivers who left. So that's part of it. We also have placements that warrant or need transportation at a district transportation. That's just by chance. And so those costs are going up as well. Plus the contracts are going up as well with inflation and rising increases in just the transportation contract. So it's kind of a multi-fold issue.
Okay, and then the last question I had, just I see a legal settlements request. Is this a one-time thing that we won't see next year?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Can we move on to the FT?
Yes.
Okay,
Right.
that was a fun part of the discussion. This is the FTE report. Okay, it's got a lot of information on it, but I'm gonna walk it down. I'm going to highlight, you guys already brought up a couple of them, but I'm going to highlight the changes. The other ones, if you have a question about, obviously feel free to ask that question as I go through it. So, not many changes in FTEs specifically until we get down to the school nutrition and extended day coordinator positions in that top section of administrative staff. Last year when I presented to you guys, I talked about the struggles that we were having due to COVID for our extended day program and our food service program. There was no predictability on revenue streams. We were told, feed all students like 5 days before school started, just make it work, everyone has to eat, and they'll figure it out as we go. So I wasn't willing to take a chance on it, and we funded those positions within the operating budget. But I knew if that revenue stream was to kick up again, that we would move those individuals back out into the operating budget. And I wasn't gonna wait for this year. We were gonna do it going forward. So what we've done is in the budget, we've currently moved the school nutrition director and the extended day coordinator back into their revolving accounts, as well as the assistant director who's listed down below for food service. What has happened with the mandate to feed all students breakfast and lunch, the state and federal government reimburse a portion for every meal that's served. We've reinforced the importance of that in the food service program to make sure that we accommodate all students eating breakfast and lunch if they opt for it. That has resulted in a large uptick in revenue, and I've actually moved the custodian into that account, which we've never been able to do. Our food service, our food service program, as dynamic as it is, was a break even, maybe a slight profit, but it was really just continuing to provide that service without creating a deficit was our goal. Now it generates a fair amount of revenue. We're able to replace equipment, pay for some salaries, and obviously I moved those individuals back into those accounts. Same thing goes for extended day. We're back actually a little bit higher than where we were pre-COVID in extended day enrollments. So both programs are run well, great administrators, and doing very well. So it was a really positive story. Any questions on that so far? Okay.
Sorry. Yes. Okay, so the extended day director is getting funded by the fees of the program,
Correct.
and the nutrition directors are getting funded by state money? because
School
the
lunch
food is-
program.
But the food is free now.
It's federal, so it is, yeah, it's federal funding for the National School Lunch Program. So that revenue that program generates now pays for that
Okay.
person's salary.
Okay, thanks. Gotcha.
And let me just highlight, this is operating budget only. It does not include grants, does not include revolvings or anything beyond that, right?
Okay.
Okay, going down to line 16. So this is the one with the classroom teachers. You can see an increase of 13 FTEs. So we had 10 of the new positions that we talked about, the superintendent talked about earlier, and then 3 FTEs from the revolving to the school budget due to free full-day kindergarten. So we're moving back in individuals from that revolving. That revolving account will no longer exist. Those individuals will be paid out of the operating budget. That's part of the whole transition to free full-day kindergarten. Okay, so that's that total of 13 positions. So the new positions plus the full-day K. Down to line 17, we have 5 positions. We added 1 additional position for the VIP program we talked about this year. And then we added 4 new FTEs that are on the list that the superintendent talked about today. So that's a total of 5 overall positions. Moving down to line 18, we have individuals who provide speech and language services. There are 2 individuals who, one was increased by a 0.2 FTE, and the second one was increased by a 0.4 FTE, totaling obviously 0.6 FTEs. That was based on the needs of the students on their IEPs and the services that they were to be provided increased, so those increased slightly. All right, line 19, ESP, this is an example of, so there were less ESP positions are able to be covered by grants in 23 than there were in 22. So as we move forward into FY 23, grants don't generally increase. We budget based on level grant funding. So unfortunately the salaries aren't level, right? They continue to grow. So they outgrow the grant, and we have to move individuals periodically into the operating budget from where they were once charged in that grant. So that's that 0.77. Okay, on line 20, we have the ESOL ELL teachers. We have a 1.0 grant to school budget. Again, the grant could not sustain this individual. They were moved back into the operating budget at a 1.0 in FY22, plus 1.5 additional positions that the superintendent mentioned today. Those are the new positions. On line 22, guidance adjustment counselors and social workers, there's a new position of 1.0 FTE that was on the list of the new positions. So that's an increase of 1.0. In line 28, under the secretaries, we have a secretary who's paid from Medicaid. And I think I've had some lengthy conversations with you guys about Medicaid, a federally funded program. Federal government kind of walked away from some of their obligations a year or so ago. It dropped from 500 to about 250. We had to move individuals in. That was part of our funding for that year. This is additional. That Medicaid money did not change, and therefore we had to move somebody into that account. That 0.45 of that secretarial position needs to be funded in the operating budget. Line 29 was the assistant director for food service. We talked about that. Line 30 is a reduction in the operating budget. So it's a movement of a custodian into the revolving accounts and out of the operating budget. Line 32, again, Medicaid's level funded, but salaries continue to go up. So on line 32, you see a 0.77 increase on that line for moving somebody back as a grant. The Medicaid funding could not sustain them. Line 34, we have OT-PT services. They increased, again, to accommodate increasing needs of students from 0.7 to 0.8, which is a total increase of, and then an additional, for a total change of, actually it's 2 individuals that went from 0.7 to 0.8, which totals a 0.2 FTE increase. Line 36, teacher aides. There are 9 teacher aides currently, as the superintendent mentioned, to provide the services we need as more kids move into the full-day K and to provide better services we've budgeted for, but this is obviously going to be dependent on enrollments, an additional 0.47 FTE for each one of those positions, which totals the 4.23 FTEs that we're projecting. That would be what I would call worst-case scenario for that increase. Van drivers and monitors decreased by 2.14. We cannot find individuals currently to fill those roles of the ones who retired from their positions. On line 38, elementary media technicians, that's a reduction of 4.0. That is actually up in the classroom teacher line item. That's that consolidation that we were talking about. And then finally in line 42, there is no FTE differential on there, it's just a budget increase. So if you, some math here, if you were to take 19 point, let's see, how do we do it? So if we take 19.73 minus the 1.35, which is a decrease in FY '22, and then you subtract out the teacher aides, because they're not on there as new positions, and the kindergarten teachers, because they're not new positions, they are individuals that are, all of those people are here currently. That adds up to the 12.5 FTE increase that superintendent mentioned on her new positions. I know there's a lot there to digest, so fire away, I'm sure you have questions.
Starting with Larry?
Number 27, the job coach, it's reduction, it's still there, but I guess I'm trying to connect the dots that it's talking about career development, you'll help running these programs, but the job coach is getting less. It's just a different person, maybe a lesser pay scale?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And on the custodian, moving it to the revolving account, I guess I'm trying to understand the revolving accounts, because to me, custodial services are operational, they're maintaining the buildings, the school, so how does it get put into revolving? What is revolving?
Is it allowed?
Yeah, where's the source of the revolving funds?
So in this case, it's a food service account. So as a food service account generated revenue, which it never had before, we were able to say there are custodial services that are needed because of the food service program. So you're able to charge off.
Allocate.
Yeah, exactly.
We haven't got there yet. I'll wait till you get down to number 43. I'll wait.
Which one, I think I covered 42 is athletic coaches, so I'm at
43 is extracurricular stipends. I guess I've asked this question before, and I'll ask it again. Is that considered pension, is that covered, is that salary, is that pensionable?
It is, because in most cases, they're in the WTA contract, and anything that's within the collective bargaining agreement is pensionable.
Larry, if it's a regular, I reached out to the county too, I know you've been asking that all along. If it's a regular pay, it's pensionable, so.
And stipends considered regular pay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Any other questions?
I have just an overall question. Is your ultimate goal is to get everybody out of revolving accounts and have them into regular accounts?
No.
Or not, just the opposite,
Quite the
right?
contrary, yeah. I mean, if I
Just
could
the
get us.
opposite.
Food service and extended day are doing really well. I'm looking to move potentially more people. I'm just waiting for that revenue stream to come in and really materialize. Again, somebody could argue that's one-time money, right? It's not necessarily sustainable. If you had a drop-off in enrollments, you shouldn't fund positions there. But I would say, and not as conservative as maybe somebody would be, I'll take that chance each year and reduce that cost to the operating budget by using the revolvings. And if they do decline, like with COVID, then we'll be forced to put them back in. And that's the way it is.
Food service has come a long way.
Ooh, unbelievable. Full 180.
Yeah,
Unreal.
good job.
Thanks.
Yes, Mark?
There's the Director of Digital Learning is up almost 10 grand, 8.3.
We hired a very qualified individual for an individual who is retiring. So we upgraded that position specifically with cybersecurity things in mind, as well as just a more enhanced knowledge base. And this individual is a teacher as well, so has that teaching background and the technology background.
Okay, and then team leaders and team chair, are these extra pay for being leadership positions?
Yes.
And those are by contract and also, right?
Yes.
Department
Okay,
chairs.
thank you.
Any of our Zoom questions?
We can move to the comprehensive.
The Zoomers.
On the comprehensive.
Okay,
All right.
all right.
This is the one with the question on the
Yeah,
circuit breaker.
I'm gonna, it can be a little confusing, but I'm gonna focus you guys on the bottom line. So in FY '23, obviously, is the year we're going into, and we're coming off of FY '22. Because of the layout of this thing, it can be a little bit confusing, but I'm gonna focus you on, if you have questions above this, feel free to ask them, but on the adjusted personnel line item, right, see, if you go down, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, you get to adjusted personnel, that's, you'll recognize those numbers as the 42,299,098 is what the personnel budget is that we're coming off of, right, for FY '22, and the 45,102,098 is our new personnel request, right, and that's a total of 2,803,000, which is a 5.71% increase on this line, as a total, I'm sorry, and then on the line it's 6.6, when you're just talking about personnel versus that increase. The goods and services, we talked about the 402 reduction in there. You can see that between FY '22 to FY '23, it is reduced by 402,000. And these numbers should align with the other documents that you have, but that gives us a total school budget going from 49,113,775 in FY '22 to 51,514,775, which is the net 2,401,000 increase using the offset in special ed. If you look below, you have the town administrator's recommendation versus the school department's request, and you have that same gap that we talked about earlier, the 120,121. Okay, moving, any questions on that?
The decrease in goods and services, I'm just, did we go?
That was the sped outsourcing
That's all,
tuition.
that's it all, okay, gotcha, sorry.
Sorry, just since we're talking about that. I was curious, I looked back at the goods and services numbers, and I've noticed that when I first started, it was like 7 million, so it's gone down by 700,000, so that's fantastic. But I'm wondering, is it mainly special ed that kind of drives that, or do you guys, what kind of like charts, reports do you keep on the consumables, like workbooks and things like that? How do you really notice the schools are, several of them are level funded, some of them have gone down from previous years, so curious how you know those, school numbers are kind of good and accurate.
So they're actuals based on the prior fiscal years when we have that information solidified from our financial system. We level fund, or traditionally have level funded everyone, so we know that that's level funded. In some cases, you may see money shift around because populations shift within schools, especially in the elementaries and the middles actually, and we reallocate between them. So that can get a little bit confusing, right? Because you're trying to do it per pupil. So that will give you some changes. But back to your original point, is it really special ed? It is. I mean, because the tuition numbers are enormous. They're flexible. They're variable. It's a moving target. I can literally go up and have a conversation with John Quilley, special ed director, today, and tomorrow he'll walk in my office and say, I hope you didn't spend that 120,000 because it just walked out. So it's very varying, and the numbers are very impactful. So I would say that a lot of this is dependent on the special ed tuitions.
I think you're selling yourself a little bit short there, like in looking at some of the numbers from the schools, they really do seem, some have gone down by considerable amounts of money, and I appreciate that, so.
We really do try to get people to make good purchases. We just went on a program to try to reduce the number of printers and toner, and because those costs can be tremendous. So we're really drilling down as deep as we can get without getting ridiculous, to try to free up money to use in the classrooms rather than for supplies.
And also even looking at the online subscriptions, sometimes they're purchased and you use them, and we need to make sure that they're the right online subscriptions, and that's when Tom Reeve comes in to look at usage, to look at purpose and practicality, and, if they're not being used, then we don't need those the following year.
Thank you.
Okay. So if we go to section B, reimbursements, circuit breaker, the first line there has always been there. So that, the fluctuation I'd focus you in on is the 1,871,019 in red for the budget FY '22, it actually came in at 2,000,004, right, which is that increase of 132,981. So I can tell you a series of reasons which will tie into the next line down, which is called circuit breaker carryover. So DESE, the state, has a circuit breaker mechanism that helps absorb or helps the district pay for absorb high level tuition-related expenses, right? So what they did was, this year, because of COVID, they're trying to help, and they've lowered the threshold. So the way circuit breaker works is when a student cost goes above 4 times the state average for a special ed student, everything above that 4 times number, which is, let's just call it 44,000, is reimbursable at a rate, and that rate fluctuates, okay? And this is what circuit breaker is, and so it varies. I know you don't want to hear that, but it does vary, okay? So they last year decided we're going to fully fund circuit breaker. 75% is fully funded of that, right, 4 times above state average. That increased us by roughly that 132,000. They also added in transportation as a reimbursable. So you can now, if a student's tuition is up this high, you can also add their transportation costs into that 75%. So they're adding and enhancing circuit breaker reimbursement. And then COVID funding helped as well and had an impact on this overall situation. So you can see the 132, which is significant, and we're appreciative of that, but the circuit breaker carryover. So we are getting the sense that we're gonna have significant circuit breaker money left over, and it's for the reasons that I just told you, and it's COVID funding as well. And what I mean by COVID funding is the federal government's come in with COVID funding, and they're giving us a lot of flexibility in how we use it. Well, some of how we use it is how I budgeted for things, right? I can now, I don't want to use the term supplant, but I'll use the term supplant, right? We can replace some of those expenditures that we budgeted for with COVID funding. All legitimate. We vetted all of this. So that frees up money in your budget, right? And as you come to the end of the fiscal year, you can see that you're going to have a surplus, right? But we're dealing with special ed here, and we're dealing with circuit breaker, so it's a large amount of money. So I think we've had conversations, obviously, with Bridget, with the school committee, and we wanted to add a line on here because last year it was mentioned, do we have a reserve account? And we didn't. But what we'd like to consider is this money as a reserve account. So the amount of money that we're estimating right now is about $850,000. It could come in higher than that. I don't think it'll come in lower than that. So if you think about circuit breaker, it's based on tuition reimbursements from the prior year. It fluctuates as our tuitions drop, which you saw, they're dropping by 600,000. That circuit breaker number is going to start to drop. So we would like to carry forward in our circuit breaker revolving account is really what it is, this $850,000 into next year and use that one-time money as a insurance against fluctuations within the tuition line item. So in the past, we've come to you guys a lot, right, and said we need money because we're out of money, we didn't anticipate this. This would be a buffer to absorb that, those rising costs. Right now they're falling, but as things are cyclical, they will eventually rise again.
So on circuit breaker next year, they're gonna look to this year's fiscal year, and that 600,000 of tuition is in this year's budget. So we're gonna get an excess reimbursement next year based on this year.
Correct.
But in 2024, they're gonna say your costs are down, and we're gonna get a drop. Okay.
So it's kind of this up and down moment, and when we're up, that's what I'm talking to you guys about. We need more funding, right? And we're scrambling. When we're down, well, things are good. That's what we're doing right now. Tuition costs are down. We have extra money. We can reduce our goods and service. That's great. But to try to level that out over the long term, the 850 would go a long way. You can, just for clarity, I've run this by DESE. We've had people on conference calls with this. They will allow us to carry for 2 years the full amount of your circuit breaker in the revolving account, you can move it forward for 2 years, then you have to spend it down to a degree, all right, to a level. And I can manage that. So I guess this is really positive news, right? We now have a surplus that's come upon us for a lot of reasons. And basically wanted to share it with you, because it's usually I'm coming looking for.
Yeah, fantastic.
You answered my question, because I was gonna ask you,
Why
is
isn't
there
there
a
a number there?
time frame that this has to be spent? And, you know, what's the criteria around that amount of money?
So, that's another good point. This is specific to special ed, right? It's a circuit breaker account, it's designed for special ed. The money in there has to be expended on special education. There are other ways that we can manage that, but that's the long and short of it, right? So, it is special ed related. It is not unusual for a district in our area in particular to carry money forward in circuit breaker. We never did it because we never had the money. It's just the way it was managed. But this is an opportunity caused by a lot of reasons, and it will give us a buffer for a long period of time.
Fantastic.
And the circuit breaker is still based on actual cost, not circuit breaker money used to reduce your, to supplement your cost.
Correct.
Okay.
Isn't the circuit breaker too, this is unusual that they're fully funding it.
They hold their cards close to the chest. They won't tell you. So you're forced to do like a 70, 71, 72%, and then you get what we call a bump up, and they'll say, oh, it's 75, but you can't budget that way, because if they don't, then how are you gonna make up the difference? So we budget conservatively, they come in, and everyone says, oh, you guys are great, thank you, right, because you get the bump up. Just a game they play, I guess.
They were talking 63% and no transportation several years ago, so
I think this is due to-
75 with transportation. It's
This is
great.
Sue Lawton's letters and comments and everything else she's been working on for years.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Just help me understand the math. The 800 is the savings of the 600 or so, plus the extra, I'll say 133 or so?
Roughly. And
Roughly? So I'm just trying to get the math in my head. Roughly.
Yeah, I'll agree with that roughly. There's a lot of things. I mean, I don't want to oversimplify. I simplify things so I can explain them and we all get it in a general sense. But if you got it in the weeds, I'd have to show you 20, 30 things that make that up. But in a general sense, you're accurate. It's really savings. A lot of this is COVID related though, too. So it's just like a combination of things that worked in our favor that added up to that.
Well, the other thing too is you worked out a number saying circuit breaker that we were gonna receive this fiscal year was $1.8 million. And we were assuming 70% without transportation. They go to 75%, you picked up a 5% bump.
Right.
Plus now, the transportation's eligible, so costs that weren't eligible before are now eligible for reimbursement, so you get that excess. So instead of $1.8 million, we're getting 2.6 in reimbursement-ish.
Right.
Okay. So, and the thing is, they could turn around next year and says, oh yeah, we'll still do transportation, but we're gonna be back at 70%. Well, no.
Or 65.
Or 65. It's a- Yeah.
Student Opportunity Act, which you may have heard about, they're really trying to keep that circuit breaker at its maximum or give you the ability to budget based on a certain number. So I think they're gonna try to hit 75 going forward, and the governor really supports that, and I think the Senate and House do as well.
Other questions on circuit breaker?
No, you did a really good job clarifying that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So I think, Mark, you had mentioned the special ed tuition in, or one of you guys did, right? So unfortunately, we don't have any opportunities this year, so that's zeroed out. Our Medicaid reimbursement, so we've gotten some good news on that front. So they drove it down, and then are starting to drive it back up, because federal government has changed, right? Leadership has changed, and now COVID has come upon us. So again, trying to help out municipalities, local governments, they are being more flexible in what you can get reimbursed on for Medicaid, like circuit breaker in some ways. So that we're predicting at a $165,000 increase. Again, you don't know until it's finally in-house, but I'm trying to be as upfront as I can with these projections, okay? McKinney-Vento, zeroed out because we just don't see anything coming. Okay, going down the list, now we're into fees and tuition. So full day K, you can see the 320 goes away and is replaced by the operating budget funding. Transportation, you can see the drop off in 21. We took in 321,000 less than projected. Collaboration between the town and the schools, we were able to cover that gap. Athletic fees, we're projecting a slight uptick to 410,000, which is an increase of 40,000. The booster clubs, just wanted everyone to realize what they contribute as a portion of our athletic budget, very significant amount. So we'll level fund that at 300. Preschool is level funded for tuitions. We don't expect that program to grow or generate significantly more revenue. Extended day, you can see that we anticipate 475,000 in revenue versus obviously the expenses. Extracurricular and parking, pretty much status quo there. So that puts us down at 280, which the lion's share of that is the full day K. And then everything below that in the grant section is level funded because there is no predictability within that, right? In most cases, they do level fund it, and that's, you have to live with that. So your costs go up, but they level fund the grants, and you just have to figure out how to absorb that within your budget.
And the grants are not on a per pupil basis, it's per program.
Correct, correct.
I have a question about the preschool. What is our enrollment capacity, and when was the tuition last increased? And have there been kind of studies about what other integrated preschools are doing for the area of the peer mentor tuition? Because 125 actually sounds really low to me.
Yeah, for preschool, I don't have the exact number. Oh, I have 97.
Right.
We'd love to have more students in the preschool. There's actually gonna be a wait list. We're gonna mention that at school committee on Thursday. Julie Martin just let me know this morning or yesterday. And we just don't have the space. She actually gave up her office for a small classroom. So we're just.
When was the last time we increased the tuition, and have we kind of did the?
So we've done a 3-year increase. We have a plan of over 3-year increase to help sustain the program. So we're into the second year of 3 years. We actually delayed it last year because of COVID, and I think the year before actually it was very delayed, but it was a 3-year plan, and that's back in place. I think we're into year 2 now with 1 more year.
I'm all about children having access to education, early childhood education. Just income of 125 for our peer mentors seems pretty low. And so I'm glad to hear that there is a plan for tuition increase, and I'd be curious of what the surrounding towns, if we're in line with surrounding towns as far as tuition for integrated preschools.
We have that, I can get that.
We
to
did
you.
look at
We
that
did,
when we set
yeah.
the fees.
Yeah.
School committee weighed in on that.
And
It
Dr.
just,
Quilly has it.
yeah, it got derailed because of COVID.
It's still very retail, especially compared to the private institutions.
And you can't, they are apples to oranges, you can't really compare, but it does for 97 students, it does sound low. And is that kind of in line with how our kindergarten, when we were doing our kindergarten fees for offsetting the cost of the teachers, is that also taken into, so when I see that 125, that is just the tuition, it is not an offset of what we're paying for the faculty?
So a portion of that revenue pays for a portion of a teacher and a portion of the preschool director's salary. It is not a lot. You are accurate. It's not a revenue generator.
I'd like to see it maybe be a little bit more, but again, I'm all for children to have access.
We had another, like, partial of a school, maybe we could have a.
Bring in more peer models is what we need.
Yeah, bring in more peer models, that's exactly.
Other questions on the comprehensive budget?
Gisette, you had a question about the COVID grants?
Yes.
Do you want it at a high level, or you want it at a?
Stupid simple.
It looks like that. I can email it to you if you want.
Do we have a
Yes,
copy of
please.
All right, so let me give you at the high level. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 COVID funding sources that ranging from municipal COVID relief that the schools and town benefited from, to specifically targeted relief for the schools. The total amount of COVID grants was $4,382,000. I'll just round these, $4,400,000. We currently have expenses totaling $1,780,000. We had payroll totaling $1,451,000, which gives you a total of $3,231,000 that we've spent to date, and that leaves a balance of $1,150,686. All of that money right now, most of this money, not all of it, is in ESSER 3. So there were 3 ESSERs. That's why I was asking you which ESSER. So ESSER 3 is the only one with money left in it, and the lion's share of that money is in that ESSER 3.
So is that something you have access to immediately, or is somebody holding it until you come up with a plan and they have to approve it?
Yeah, we submitted the plan back in the summer, and then actually, next week, we'll be submitting the amendment to that. We have to show them any changes that we've made, because it's okay to make changes as your needs change. And there's some parameters that we have to make sure that we follow. So we'll submit that amendment next week, and then we actually have 2 more years. So we don't have to spend that all at once, so we've kind of allocated it, because we really need to make sure that we set money aside for like the summer programming, that we need to make sure that we have retention during those months.
Okay, and off topic, at the senior center, I get a lot of questions regarding the new middle school and merging and stuff, and how many more teachers and special aides and stuff you're going to need, so that the budget will go up. And of course, Pollyanna here says both schools are adequately supplied, so I would rationalize when they're merged, they should pretty much have everything, and then once they're in service for a while, they can then make a decision of where their weaknesses are or are not to fill in. But I don't anticipate big increases of staff when
As
the
part
new
of the
building comes.
As part of the design,
You're gonna get that.
Yeah, and exactly, as part of the design process, we had to work with Compass of making sure that we had to allocate every room for what was going to be in that room with current staff. And as you know, there's gonna be, and you know, this isn't anything that's hidden, that there is going to be some consolidation, or there's gonna be some reallocation, because there are gonna be certain positions that you don't need as many of, that might be reallocated to a different type of curriculum, or you just might not need. And that's the process that we're in at this point, as we're working on that.
Okay. All right.
Just to clarify, the grant programs, the COVID grants and the circuit breaker amount, these are specific to the school. In other words, you can't take this 800K that's in the circuit breaker and put it into snow and ice or something like that. And the COVID also is you applying to whoever it is you're applying to with what your proposal is, they're approving it, they're providing you the funding, and you have to stay within those parameters, you can't
Yeah, with the
move.
grants, we submit every year, there's a whole, like, it's a very comprehensive process during the summer with all these title grants, and you have to submit detail of what you're using it, how you're using it, and then when in order to get this money, you have to show what you're using it for the following year, and then they audit you as well.
Okay.
And they don't do any cost of living adjustments in their grant programs.
No, not usually.
could be
And
never.
some of it depends on the population, like for Title I, which is low income, and even our Title III, some of that money grant money goes to other schools, like Blessed Sacrament, or the Home, or other private schools if you have students living in town that go to St. Catherine's, some of that grant money goes to them. So we do, with the grant, we work with those surrounding schools to determine if they're gonna take it. If they are, there's certain parameters they have to follow. It's a lot of work. And sometimes they choose to say, we're good, which is better for us. But, you know, some of those we have to work with. And we work closely with Blessed Sacrament on a lot of the grants.
Yes.
One more question. We talked about Tri-County, we talked about Norfolk Aggie, charter schools. Was that number, did we talk about that number tonight?
With 34, so we're down. I think we had 43 before that, so we're down.
Have we had, a few years past, we had an issue with residency. It made me think when you mentioned St. Catherine's, or working with St. Catherine's and Blessed Sacrament, we had an issue with charter schools and the residency and verifying where students are coming from. Since we're allocating funds out, has that gotten to be easier?
That's been a lot better. We're still having a little bit of an issue with one, and so we work on that with legal to make sure that we get those residency, but it's been much better. And I think that's reflected too also in our numbers.
So what
that
is the
increased.
total funds that we are now allocating out to charter schools?
We'll look at the funds.
Is that in central office?
I think we're gonna have to get back to you on that.
Yeah, I don't wanna miss
thought about
school.
it, but not until like 6 o'clock tonight. Sorry.
I can just tell you that we're.
I'm not trying to stump you.
So we budgeted as part of our expenditures, 141,266 out to charter schools. Basically, we get a bill from the state. And
Yeah.
They take it off our charter sheet.
So we don't, it doesn't come through us, it
Oh,
goes
okay.
through the
Yeah.
town.
Okay. So that's one of the.
And Jim, you actually,
Straight off.
the town just takes the,
No, they don't even, it's just on the cherry sheet, so it's
Yeah.
a wash at the.
Yeah.
at the
yes, you
bottom.
never actually see the money, you never write a check.
Yeah.
We show it as a revenue and an expenditure, and it just,
Yeah, washes
they
out.
take it just like the MBTA assessments.
So trying to track that residency can definitely be a challenge, 'cause it's not like you can hold the money and say, prove it.
Yeah, we do, you know, I have to give, you know, props to Mary Mortale. You know, she, you know, works with me to do that work, and she does a tremendous job.
Any other questions on school budget? I don't know if you,
Anywhere in the school budget?
did you want to drop down to a specific school or?
So I do have,
Okay.
first I want you to know, I actually paid attention, I went through everything. And the one that jumps out at me is replacement equipment tech, which is up 1,680%. From 4,000 to 71,182.
Which,
So
I
that's,
just felt
budget are you in?
obligated to ask.
so that's in instructional technology.
what's
What,
Yeah, instructional
Mark,
technology.
what line number is it? Like the budget line,
Number
top left corner?
25,
and which budget?
total instructional technology.
At the top of yours.
Yeah, it's instructional technology.
All right, so really good question, actually.
There's a separate tab in the book. Oh, just needed to flip.
So we were talking about, so capital, outside of all this discussion, we've funded Chromebooks through capital. That's a whole nother, work with capital committee, Josette could speak to that. So Jim, we've been talking with Jim about our concern about Chromebooks going forward, because we were forced to, with COVID, to give everyone Chromebooks, right? That wasn't part of our plan. So we gave it to them, and now we have to sustain it. So Jim had said, can you guys fund any of the technology within your budget, even though it wasn't in there originally? So I talked to Tom Reeve, Bridget and I sat down, and we said, Tom, what do you need that's a significant expense that we can add to your budget? So at least we're absorbing some of this, and this will probably grow over time to internalize more of it. So the Wi-Fi access points in the entire Walpole High School, so every wireless hotspot in that building has to be replaced, and that total is about 67,000. And in addition, I think that 4 was in there as well for replacement parts. So it's really, the increase, the 1,000% is that nothing was really in there, and now we're taking on that responsibility.
Okay, I'm all set, thanks.
Mark, I think, Nancy, did you want to say or Bill?
Yeah, I was going to call them up next, because I know they have some legislative items they wanted to discuss too.
I just wanna give them to these guys, but,
No, you have me help you pass them out?
oh, sure.
I thought that's why you helped me out. I got nothing to say.
You don't-
No, I have nothing to say.
Oh,
I'll swallow them anyway.
there you go. is a first. My colleague Bill has nothing to say. Good stuff. I guess I would just like to say, and I'm sure I'm speaking for Bill and the rest of us as well, that the work that Bridget and Mike have done over the last 2 years is unbelievable. And I think their ability to speak to the budget in the detail that they can is, it's hard to know how they sleep because there's a lot to move around, and then you overlay COVID on top of it. They've done an amazing job. But just want to give you a little bit of further information. And since we're the largest budget in town, we like to take some time to make sure that we're available to you guys. Most importantly, one of the things that I wanted to point out is our budget is heavily weighted toward personnel. And in this proposed budget, personnel represents over 80% of the total dollars. This year, we have an added variable that we need to negotiate 3 of our 4 union contracts. The teacher's contract, the custodial contract, and the secretarial contracts are all up. And it's important for you to realize that this total request includes the dollars that we feel we need to fairly compensate our staff that have done an amazing job for us the last few years. For obvious reasons, we can't disclose the specifics of our thinking, but we do have the dollars in the request to cover the contracts. We also recognize that the request we're bringing forward is large, but it's a truly needs-based budget, as you've heard tonight. The administration always looks for ways to reallocate money, to increase efficiencies, and to maximize the results for our students. And we proudly point to the fact that we proposed an override in 2012, and many of our naysayers said, oh, they'll be back year after year, and now we're proposing our 11th budget since then. It's a testament to the collaboration and the hard work, and we're really grateful. You'll hear you've heard tonight some of the specifics, but we found it useful in the past to provide some comparison information for context. And for over 10 years now, we've used these same towns plus the state for both financial and academic comparisons, since Walpole originally fell in the middle on both of those scales. As we all know, using averages can distort some of the granular information, but it's good for general overview. Some of the things worth noting in the information that we just gave out tonight is Walpole homeowners generously support the town's budget, since the average single-family tax bill is right in the middle of the group. It's number 9 out of the 17. What we don't have is the commercial tax base that in many cases, and in many cases, the state also supports our neighbors at a better rate than we're getting. Of particular note, Dedham, Norwood, and Foxborough have significantly higher per pupil expenditures than ours, yet their tax bills are significantly lower. But just think about the commercial tax base that they have. Another point is, since so much of the Walpole Public School budget is personnel, we monitor our teacher salaries carefully for both fairness and financial responsibility. And you can see that we're not overexpending in that area either. To me, the summary is that the Walpole Public Schools is continuing to strike the right balance between educational needs and available revenue. And with your support, we feel like this budget request can really benefit every child in our district in meaningful ways. The other page talks about state aid, and that's significant for a different reason. Massachusetts public schools are the best in the country, and we aim to remain competitive in this very challenging environment. The graph shows that as the cost of education in Walpole has risen, the burden has very disproportionately been placed on local taxpayers. This is the case in many of our neighboring towns as well. But our ability to remain competitive in this top-notch environment should be a collective source of pride for all of us. Another thing that I noticed is if we move forward with the governor's budget, there's an additional $30 per student for what's called minimum aid. And we had a meeting about a month ago with the tech board of directors and superintendents and people from all of the nearby towns. We were making the argument that if minimum aid is, how should I say this? Minimum aid is what all towns are striving to get to. We happen to be a minimum aid district already, but about 80% of the towns in Massachusetts are also minimum aid towns. So collectively, we're trying to make the argument at the state level that $30 per student is a low number, and we're going to try to make a pitch for a much higher minimum aid number. Whether we're successful or not for this particular year, it seems like that's a logical argument to make going forward. So we just sent a note out this afternoon talking about having a collective message to our legislators. And I think that what we need to do as a town is make sure that we're all supporting the same things, because if a couple of people ask for a couple of items and then you have 3 or 4 groups asking for items, it allows the legislators to get off the hook on the big ticket items in particular. So I think over the next couple of weeks, we'll try to solidify what it is that we're going to approach the state on. I'm not super optimistic about this particular year, but I think it's a good time to make the argument. And when you look at the graph, it's really telling about how that orange bar at the bottom is our state aid, and the top solid line is what we're actually spending. And when you put it together with the previous page, we're below the state average. We're below most of the towns nearby. But the cost of education is expensive, and it's rising at a rate that it would be great if we could get some more help from the state. So those are the messages that we wanted to end with. But we also wanted to express our gratitude because we've gotten to this point because of good cooperation.
Just a couple quick questions. Stuff that we had talked about in the past that never seems to make it off the bottom of the list. For special ed medical expenses, are we given any more power to request and get private insurance to cover evaluations and so forth under the special ed program when they have to go see doctors and specialists? Or are we still on the hook for paying those medical bills for evaluations for people under special ed?
I don't know that one.
We
That's, we're gonna have to get back to you on.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, because there was talk that the state says you can't require people to use their personal health insurance to get an evaluation to put a person on or off special ed.
That was a couple of years ago.
And also, what constitutes special education versus resident medical services? And it's like, nobody's really gotten any movement on that either. I don't know if those are items we want to push onto the priority list or strictly work on, base funding. But I mean, there's a lot of expenses that, in theory, we should be able to get off of our books and put on the state because they're medical expenses and not special education expenses.
If I recall, previous chair, when we talked about this is one of the kind of litany of things that
Yeah.
Sue Lawson, your
Yes.
colleague as well, was
Yep.
quite hot on when I worked in the legislature. They were seeing over time that many of the young, it wasn't so much of a problem with younger parents as well, so I'd love to see.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We talked
Yes.
about
Yep.
how it was kind of just a generational
Yep.
sort of thing, so
Yeah.
that was a few years ago now, so hopefully when we circle back with Dr. Quealy, we'll have some better news. But I think because none of us seem to be really
Jumping
enlivened
on-
by this, it
yeah.
might be because it's not that much of an issue.
Okay, yeah, so the only other part is, what does special education, where do you draw the line on special education versus medical services for our outplaced students? And, it's like, yes, the child is required to have a nurse walk around with them, but that's not education. That's medical support so that the kids can have an education. Why do we have to pay the medical support? You know, and like I said, you look at these outplacements, the state sets the tuition, and they don't draw the line of it's tuition versus medical. And we should have the state saying it's medical, either private insurance pays for it or Medicare pays for it, the town shouldn't have to pay for it.
That was a big concern a
Yeah.
couple
Are
years
you,
ago.
are you referring to like OT and PT services during the day, school day and things like that?
Not if it's actual education, but there are students that get outplaced and they have to have a licensed nurse accompany them throughout the whole day.
I know, I remember some of our discussions, and as a parent, it's more, for me, when you think of evaluations, when you're going to again, that kind of work partnership with the school will do an evaluation. If you do not agree with that, you can request an outside evaluation, which then the district would pay for if that is what, again, in that meeting, that was decided.
Yeah, but some of those evaluations could be covered by private insurance, and often parents would let you charge their insurance company, but others weren't letting you charge their insurance company because they thought it would increase their premiums. But I think that's become less of an issue.
Yeah, that was the issue, was
Yeah.
that,
Concern on the premium.
you know,
Right.
some families were resistant, even though it wasn't going to cost them in any way.
Right.
Yeah, Bill's right. It's worth checking into.
This is
I
Mary.
I have a comment on the salary. I know several years ago when I looked at a similar list, we didn't take into account that, say, Walpole pays 80% of medical, where maybe Medfield pays 50. And that's several $1,000s. So I think when we did that, look, we were kind of in the middle of the pack. You know, take-home pay, I'll say. And I think that's what matters to most people who work, is what are you getting home? So I don't think I don't think we're at the bottom per se, maybe salary, but I think when you total benefits, I think I hope we're still somewhere in the middle.
I would like to think that, because we're negotiating.
And actually,
Just saying.
our benefits percentages, we are actually getting larger contributions than many of the neighboring towns, because a lot of towns have not moved below 70%. And we do have what's creeping towards the majority of people being in the 60 or 70% category. So. Any other questions for school department?
Mark,
Yes.
it's Kathleen.
Go ahead, Kathleen.
Can we get a copy of Nancy's documents?
Oh, sure.
Definitely.
Yep.
If I could figure out how to email it, I'll email it. Well,
You can give it up.
Drop it off on your way home, Nancy.
gotcha.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we had three budgets. Town administrator's recommendations, which actually are approximately $46,000 higher on two of the budgets, and $160,000 lower than our school department wants. Do people want to think about this more? Do they want to make some changes?
I wasn't sure we were gonna go through, probably for Mike, something in the building services part I was trying to figure out.
Okay.
Like water and sewer, they're flat, you know, the increase, and I would think, from watching Water and Sewer Commission, our rates will go up. I'm just wondering how they just, you know, is that just because it's zero-based? And water, sewer, you know, for the school, you know, all the schools, water, sewer, and then, electricity is flat, you know, same as 22. So I'm just wondering, I think water and sewer is gonna go up. Based on my oil bill today, I think fuel, gas, whatever the schools I think are heated by, is gonna start going up, for at least for a little while.
So Donnie pays for a municipal budget, heating for the buildings, we pay for electricity. We've done a fair amount of upgrades, high-efficiency upgrades that have helped us kind of move along. COVID kind of threw that for a curveball, so my baseline is out of whack to begin with. So, I mean, I could be more conservative and add more to it, but I figure it's 1 year. If it starts to jump on us, then I'll increase it next year, but I think we're okay for now, but they're valid points.
And electricity went down, I'm guessing because we're doing smarter lighting, whatever, LEDs and such.
LEDs and stuff, yeah.
Actually, how are you doing in this year's budget through the first 7 months?
We're fine at this point, I don't see any indications with that.
Okay. I heard.
Do you see indications elsewhere?
I heard something through a parent of a student who had another student over at Blessed Sacrament saying, for some reason, they ran out of paper in class that day. So I don't know if it was a supply issue or if it was a budget issue.
Over here?
Not at this.
Blessed Sacrament.
No,
Oh, Blessed Sacrament.
one student at Blessed Sacrament had a sibling at an elementary school in Walpole, and the elementary school did not have paper available.
So that, twofold, it's not budget related, there was actually a run on paper at
Okay,
one point.
there you go, okay.
And so we had to go track it down and buy it from somebody else. and
Okay.
Get pallets of it, so.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think it was budgetary, I was pretty sure it was supply chain. Do we want to contemplate more on the school and reconvene on Thursday?
Well, I would,
Or do we want to make changes now or approve as is?
I would like to contemplate, because we're also off by
Yeah.
120,000.
Okay.
So,
Alrighty. So we'll
because at
take,
the moment, the vote would be, my recommendation would be to vote for Jim's budget, and maybe there's something that can happen between now and then.
okay. So we'll reconvene on Thursday for a review of the school budgets?
So there's a school committee meeting on Thursday.
Okay.
I think, so I just was checking on your agenda for next week. So next week on the 7th, you have water and sewer, stormwater, and Walpole Media. I don't know if Walpole Media has their budget ready to go.
Okay.
And on the 10th, Thursday night, you have the budget, the FY '23 budget finalization
Okay.
and the personnel articles. So so Bridget, you guys really aren't available to come in and
On Thursday.
next Thursday night, for this coming Thursday.
No, we cannot.
So you want to just talk about it the 10th? Because you're scheduled to talk about the budget anyway.
So school committee is not meeting on the 10th? They're every other Thursday, or are they?
Or Mike can come,
I could be at the meeting if you want.
and I can take school committee.
Your call, I mean.
Are you off on the 10th? Or are you meeting every week on school committee? I'd love to give the board a night off here.
My preference would be to do it next week, because it'll allow you guys to ask your questions, whatever
Okay,
you may
yep,
have.
send your emails off to
I'll
Bridget.
tell you this,
and-
so the budget we started off with was close to a $400,000 difference. I met with the representatives from the school committee, school administration, along with a few members of the select board. I got it down, I pushed revenues up as high as I was comfortable with. Jody wasn't as comfortable as I was, but, looking at the averages and everything, my number was my number as of that date. Obviously, tonight I brought to your attention, there's about 47,660 available, because these other two budgets came in. My preference, if you're gonna use that 460, if you don't wanna do what Mark suggested, put it towards OPEB or put it into one of those stabilizations. But I also understand that the schools would like that money probably, so I'm leaving it up to you, but I can tell you, I don't have any more available than what that 47,660 is the number I have. It's your budget, when I hand it off to you guys, you could do a couple things with it. You could do nothing like Mark suggested and just leave it in there. You could put it towards OPEB or stabilization. You could do the 66-34 split, and you ask me where I want to put it, I'd say put it in the reserve fund, or, park it on the town side somewhere. Or you can give it all to the school department, so is that 5 options there?
Okay, so
So that's what you guys can talk about on, before you finalize the budget.
On the 10th.
On the 10th, because Jody and I will work together to have a motion for you, funding sources and everything outlined.
So if school department does not have a meeting on Thursday, the 10th, we'll move the follow-up to the school committee on to Thursday, the 10th, and vote the complete budget after that discussion. Alrighty, so no meeting this Thursday.
No.
We do have meeting minutes, if, hopefully people have had a chance to go through them over the school break. If not, we can defer again, but I'd rather try to get some of these at least on the books and out of the way. Has everybody had a chance to look at minutes?
I did
See some head nodding there. Okay. Alrighty. Thank you, school department. We'll see you again on the 10th. If you do have questions, just send them off to Bridget, and she'll get them in the right hands and get them back to you. Alrighty. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, do you have anything you want to go over before we
No,
go to
just
the minutes?
quickly, while we were sitting here, I sent out a memo to you folks about sewer and water budgets. Take a look at it. It's a lot of information to digest. I need your help with the sewer and water situation. You're gonna see an increased request or recommendation by me, 18% on one budget and 11% on another budget.
Okay.
My memo explains why such a drastic increase. Basically, I think you know, you've been on this committee for long enough, most of you. The rates have been low, artificially low. If you look at the history I provided to you, you know, 1 year, one of them was -%.
Yeah.
So, one way or another, we have to get caught up, and I really dig into it. I came up with some financial policies I've asked the sewer and water commissioners to consider adopting.
Yeah.
And, you know, they set their rates after the budget is already set. And, you know, that's not the best way to do it. I'd like them to buy into this, and if they don't like, I'm assuming they won't like the 18, the 11% increase. There's other options on the table, some of which were outlined to them. They commissioned a study back in 2020 of their rates and everything, and one of them was build in a standard rate, I think we called it capital or something, that everyone, I don't know, pick a random number, $20 on your bill for the infrastructure that's in and around Walpole. So there's other ideas on the table, but they've been reluctant to listen to myself, the DPW, and the finance team with our recommendations in the past. So I'm asking us, you know, I mentioned it in the budget message, I need the select board and the finance committee to help me work with the FinCom on this, with the sewer and water commissioners. So the commissioners are set to discuss, their regular meeting is tomorrow night at 6:30, but they're also set to discuss the budget that night. I am not gonna be at the whole meeting because I have a select board meeting. I'm gonna ask Patrick and Jody and Lisa to attend. Rick and Scott will be there too, so. But I'm sure there's gonna be some pushback on what I've presented to them. So look through it.
Okay.
And I'll have another memo later on this week, kind of outlining the warrant is finalized, the select board's gonna sign it tomorrow night. And I'll have a memo for you outlining all the articles and then kind of giving a brief description of what you're gonna talk about next week. And if you have any questions.
Oh, did you get a date on when the book has to be sent out to the press?
Yeah.
I don't think it was on the schedule.
Now this is rebooting, so I'll include that in the memo.
Okay, alrighty. And if Walpole Media is not ready on the 7th, they most likely won't be ready on the 10th either?
For?
Walpole Media's budget?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Last time I talked to Mark and Jean, this was back when I set the schedule. I think it was in January or early February. They said they thought they would be, but I haven't touched base in a couple of weeks, so.
Walpole Media will be ready on the 7th.
Will? Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
So that answers that.
alrighty,
That's good.
okay. Alrighty.
Jeff, I have a question with the
Yes.
water and sewer. They're pretty much an island unto themselves,
Yes, they are.
and I find that really frustrating, that I honestly believe it should be under the administration and such, and we can, correct me if I'm wrong, but we can suggest and really forcibly suggest they do X, Y, Z, and if they dig their heels in and say, we're not gonna do this, what gives?
So ultimately, they're an elected board. They can
Correct.
do what they want to do. But if you're asking me the
That's
question.
a hypothetical.
Yeah, if you're asking me the question, well, what happens if they run out of money or they're projecting to run out of money? They can do multiple things. We've done it this past year. We dipped into the retained earnings at the spring and the fall town meeting to help balance their budget. I think for sewer, it was 200 and 200 each town meeting. So, yeah, we can continue to do that. We've done that for a while. But that's like using free cash to help balance the budget every spring.
Well, it's what we just saw with,
Not sustainable.
what was it?
Norfolk Aggie.
Norfolk County.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've been dipping in for 10 years, and now they came in with the
Yeah.
huge
So
increase.
that's one. So the second option is one that we're currently looking at with administration, Scott, Rick, our finance team and DPW team. Where can we cut if we need to cut in the budget in the fiscal year? It's pretty tough because the chemicals for sewer, for water especially, is pretty, like, I think, Larry, you just mentioned, your oil bill's huge. those chemicals, the cost for those chemicals, you'll see it in the budget, have gone up significantly over the years. And I don't want to start cutting chemicals where we treat the water, but we'll see where we could cut as far as the in-year budget. And then the next option is if they run at a deficit, it hits the town's free cash. So,
Thank you.
Now, supporting the enterprise fund budgets, though, they can't unilaterally use their retained earnings. That has to get voted on by town meeting?
yes, it does.
Okay. And the same with free cash?
Well, when the DOR goes to close
right.
out the budget and
Yeah.
everything, and if they close out at a deficit,
Right.
they're hitting us somewhere, and they're just gonna
So,
automatically.
so if we vote the funding sources for their enterprise funds, and then they don't comply by setting adequate rates.
Yes. We've received a lot of pushback over the years about indirect costs, and
Yeah.
I've already had questions from the commissioners about indirect costs.
Mm-hmm.
Indirect costs 66% of it goes to the school department. It's one of those that we've built our budget around because we've been able to justify it and then explain that, you know, there's OPEB costs in there that the town pays out.
Yeah.
There's health insurance costs, there's fixed costs for Tom Percher County to work on the vehicles. And we have a whole formula
Yeah.
that in 2017, we reviewed with the commissioners, we explained to them, you've asked us to look at this again, here's the breakdown, you know, administration, X amount of percent, we estimate that I spend on working on sewer and water, so they bought into it.
Yeah.
And, you know, so those, we vote on each one of those.
And you administer their debt service through your finance department, and they've got to cover
Same
debt
with
service
treasurer
costs.
collector's office. When they go up to collect a water bill,
Yeah.
you know, we're estimating that 20 or 25% of their time is spent on that, and that's actually in the packet that I sent out tonight. So, we'll see. I've asked the commissioners to all attend the meeting next week. I don't know. I'm sure some of them might come, so we'll see.
All righty.
Okay.
Thank you, Jim.
More to come.
All righty. On to minutes. September 2nd, which was our reorganization meeting. Anybody have questions or comments on the minutes of the 2nd?
Article 4.
Article 4.
It has Brian Jarvis.
Let's see. I'm probably looking at it. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Brian Jarvis.
I have the same question.
Okay,
Yeah.
wasn't just me.
Yeah, okay. Brian Jarvis had previously recommended that a
I,
Jim, quick question.
Sorry.
On our minutes for Article 4 Stabilization Fund, Brian Jarvis, is he bond counsel?
No, he's the owner project manager for the.
Oh, okay.
yes, so he should not have anything to do with
Yeah, so
stabilization.
he wouldn't have recommended
His name
anything
is
for the
listed in
stabilization
sta-
fund.
Under the stabilization.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he definitely.
No, he has nothing to do with that. He's with
Yeah.
Compass. Real
All right,
nice guy,
exactly. Yeah, okay.
but, okay, that's the only,
Present at that meeting, there was a discussion about the bonding for the middle school project, he would have been present, but I don't know how it's written in the minutes.
Yeah, I don't think he would have said that a stabilization fund of upwards of 20 to 30 million would have been a goal for our town to have.
That was Peter Frazier.
Oh, okay.
okay.
Peter Frazier?
Peter
Yes.
Frazier.
Okay. Frazier or Frazier?
Frazier.
Frazier, okay. Gotcha. Okay.
With that correction, I would recommend approval of those minutes.
Okay. Any other questions? So we have a motion to accept by Josette. Do I have a second?
Yep.
I will second.
With the changes.
With the correction.
With the correction.
Yep. All in favor of accepting, say aye. Actually, I
Aye.
gotta do roll
Oh, you
call,
gotta
sorry.
do a roll call.
Because we're Zoom. Okay. Denny?
Abstain.
Abstain. Josette?
Yes.
Ally?
Abstain.
Brian?
Abstain.
Steve?
Steve,
Oh, sorry,
Steve's not
Steve,
here.
that's-
Steve's not here.
Susan?
Yes.
Jeff's not here. Kathleen?
Yes.
Lucy?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Larry?
Abstain.
Abstain. And myself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9.
905.
0, 4.
4.
0, 4.
Yeah.
Okay. 9, 2.
Okay.
All right. September 9th.
Yes.
Discussions
Article 6.
on 6, 7, 8, and 9 capital budget items. Article 6.
Yes, it has Adam Dam instead of Allen Dam. Should be Allen Dam.
Yes. Allen Dam, correct. That's the one where we had tons of narrative.
Yes, it's a lot.
Yeah. I don't think there
That
was,
was the only thing.
yeah. Susan made the motions.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Never mind. Allison's,
Oh.
Ally's name is spelled wrong too.
Oh.
Thank you, Josette.
How would you like it to be spelled in this, alley or?
It's just two L's and a Y.
Okay.
A-L-L-Y.
Gotcha. Alrighty. There was something I also had. Oh, yeah, Larry actually had asked for a clarification under the motion for Article 9. It was 910, he was the one against. Rather see ambulance fund money used for the fire engine versus incurring additional debt was the
Is that,
modification.
excuse me, Mark, is that the edit I sent you?
Yes.
I'm fine
Yeah.
with that.
Okay. Do I have a motion to accept as revised
So moved.
by Josette? I will second. All right.
Susan second.
Susan seconded, okay. Okay, so for 9-9, Denny?
Abstain.
Abstain. Josette?
Yes.
Ally?
Yes.
Brian?
Abstain.
Susan?
Yes.
Jeff's not here. Kathleen?
Yes.
Lucy? Lucy?
You're muted, Lucy.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Jean?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
And Larry?
Yes.
And myself. 1, 2, it's 1202. Let's see. 913 was the school building presentation.
Ally's name spelled wrong.
Ally's name is spelled wrong again.
I think that was the only.
There was one other comment.
Yep.
The comment, and I think Jean raised it, but I actually confirmed, it's not the current enrollment, it's the building is gonna be built for an enrollment of 905 students. And basically was saying the current enrollment of Byrd was 905. The new building will hold an enrollment of 905. With room to expand. Okay. Any other modifications for September 13th?
Favorable action,
Favored by Josette,
as with the corrections made.
with the corrections made? Okay. Do I have a second?
A second.
You got it. Okay. Doug. 913. Denny?
Abstain.
Abstain. Josette?
Yes.
Ally?
Yes.
Ryan?
Abstain.
Susan?
Yes.
Kathleen? You're muted still.
Still muted.
Still muted.
Is Just hit the
The little
space.
spacebar thing's not working. Yes.
Yes, okay. Lucy,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
and myself. Okay, 1202. September 27th.
16.
Article 16 was the fields. And that was the only item on the agenda.
September 16th, you missed.
Actually, I did not get a copy of 16 resubmitted to me. I will follow up on that one.
Okay. Do you want to look at that?
Yeah, that was the first set, and I asked them to send back revisions, and I didn't see the revised.
That's the only one I had.
Okay,
Okay, so-
I will follow up and make sure that that goes back on the agenda. Okay. So the 27th,
Ally's name's spelled wrong again.
yep. I think they just keep copying it over.
Like my double L.
Okay. Any other modifications?
I didn't see any, but
Okay. I mean, it was the one article, and
Yeah.
and we didn't vote any minutes, we just deferred.
Yeah.
So, okay. Motion to accept
so moved.
by Josette. Do I have a second?
Susan.
Susan? Okay,
Yeah,
all righty. Denny?
Abstain.
Abstain. Josette?
Yes.
Ally?
Yes.
Brian?
Abstain.
Susan?
yes,
Kathleen?
Abstain.
Abstain. Lucy?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Larry?
Abstain.
Abstain. And myself. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 10-04?
No,
No,
904.
904. 904. Okay, 2 absences. And the other ones are 11-2s. Got it. Okay. I believe there's probably another meeting missing in here, because this is the
19th.
public, the 19th is the public hearing. Once again, Ally's name is spelled wrong.
I don't have to say it
Yep,
anymore.
and the roll call count is actually wrong. In the minutes, it said 14, it should be 13, based on the attendance list. And
Where was that?
at the very top, the roll call, it actually said 14, it should have been 13. Okay. Any other modifications to our public hearing?
No,
There being none, I'll entertain a motion to accept.
so moved.
Josette, do I have a second?
Second.
Doug? Okay. Alrighty. This is 10:19. Denny?
Abstain?
Josette?
Yes.
Ally?
Yes.
Ryan? That's an abstain, Brian?
Yes.
He's abstaining.
I could read his lips.
Okay.
Okay. Susan?
yes,
Kathleen? You're still muted.
Yes.
Lucy?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Larry?
Abstain.
And myself. 2, 3. Okay, so that one's
10-03.
10-03. Okay, that's 19th. This was a joint meeting on November 23rd with the Board of Selectmen, at which the Board of Selectmen ran their meeting, covering funding source, the debt that they were looking to withdraw down for the first installment on the middle school. The discussions fluctuated around. Basically, it was their meeting, we were there for comment. And then they adjourned, and we kept our meeting open so we could appoint a representative to the continuing school building committee to replace Susan, who was stepping down, and Ally was nominated and voted in. Any modifications to the minutes?
Mark,
Yes?
I'm not muted now. Mine's minor. It's bottom of the first page. It should say sums instead of sims.
Bottom of the first page.
Yeah, second paragraph.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay. Any other modifications? There being none, motion to accept.
So moved.
Susan? Do I have a second?
I'll second. Kathleen?
Kathleen?
There you go, just leave that mute off, it's so much easier.
Actually, we'll start with you, Kathleen.
Then I'm on the screen all the time, though.
Kathleen, we're gonna start with you.
Yes.
Lucy?
No, I'm not ready. Yes. All right.
That was a yes.
That's a yes. Jean?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Larry?
Abstain.
Denny?
Abstain.
Abstain. Josette?
I was in Southern California.
You're abstaining? Okay. Ally?
Yes.
Brian?
Abstain.
Abstains. Susan?
Yes.
And myself is a yes. 1, 2, 3, 4 abstained. 904. That concludes our business for tonight. Thank you, everyone. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, and we'll see you next Monday.
So moved.
Motion by Denny to
Adjourn.
adjourn. Josette is seconded, yeah. Okay, motion to adjourn, Denny.
Yes.
Josette.
Yes.
Ally.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Susan.
Yes.
Kathleen.
Yes.
Lucy. What was that, Kathleen?
Yes.
Jean.
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Larry. Yes. And myself. Thank you, everyone. We stand adjourned, 13:00.
All right, thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to Jim.
Good night. Thank you.